Oh, what's going on, everybody? I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. And on the top of the brain, the Masters. We'll get into that momentarily. Also, the tank standings, of course, with the Pacers. Did not go well yesterday. A lot of Colts stuff. Decent amount of Colts stuff here today where some mock drafts. There's one that pretty favorable for the Colts in terms of not trading up. Also, a column from Yahoo that is just calling out the Colts defense, which I find to be peculiar. But we'll get to all that stuff. How's everything going, Jimmy Cook? Everything good? You make a ton of dough? I thought you might be retiring after making a sizable profit off of day one of the Masters, no?
No, I was playing the long game at Augusta, so not a ton of retirement funds added yesterday, but still enjoyed what we saw throughout the first 18 holes, obviously getting into it now today. And then, like you, just scouring through what the latest nuggets were in mock draft land for the Indianapolis Colts.
It never gets old, I don't think, especially when there's something brand new and I'm like, wow, I hadn't considered that one. I'll be surprised if that happens, but we'll see. But the news right now, Brooks Koepka, I call him the slacker from one of his comments earlier, where he mentioned that he doesn't practice before non-majors. This was his earlier comment a while ago.
I just practice before the majors. Regular tournaments, I don't practice. If you see me on TV, that's when I play golf.
Oh, I hate that so much, Jimmy Cook. So Brooks, the slacker Koepka, he is leading, and he's playing great right now. He's minus 11 for the tournament. He's minus 4 on the day here in the second round, and he's got a 4-stroke lead. Vic Hovland and John Rahm, they have yet to tee off. Vic later this hour, Rahm next hour. So a long way to go here, but Brooks Koepka finally healthy. That's the thing. He slipped and fell about almost 2 years ago and jacked up his knee, so he had knee surgery. His kneecap was all messed up. And now he's finally starting to get healthy, and that's what he talked about. He's like, it's not actually a different mindset or anything. I haven't rediscovered anything. He's just, I'm healthy right now. So he looks like a new golfer. Amazing what health can do for your golf game there, Jimmy.
Maybe we're looking at Brooks the wrong way. Maybe it's actually a story of inspiration, Brian. And hang with me for a second. Here's why. It's now the faith to the everyman, because Brooks Koepka, if he goes on, I understand he's doing the practice here with the Masters, but if he goes on to make a statement like that, like, yeah, I'm not practicing a ton unless it's a major, and then he goes and wins the whole thing, maybe that is the inspiration for the entire sea of golfers you see the first week or two after the Masters that are out there like, I could do this, I could set a personal best on the course I'm playing at. Maybe it's an inspirational story. Maybe we're misreading this.
You could go with that. That's fine. Some people might go along with it too. I wouldn't, but hey, whatever. This was in March of 2021. That's when he jacked up his knee. So he slipped at home in Florida, dislocated his right kneecap. He said he tried to pop the kneecap back into place and shattered it. We're off to a squeamish start already on this show today. I didn't know about this. So he tore his medial patellofemoral ligament, otherwise known as the MPFL. I didn't even know he had that, but it attaches the kneecap to the femur. He messed that up, and the doc said it's about 1.5 years in terms of his recovery. So his window right now of good health is about on track with what Doc originally said.
Look, anytime that a golfer of his caliber, all things considered, is healthy, it makes for a more exciting watch, regardless if it's the Masters, if it's the Open, or if it's just a normal weekend event in golf on the tour that's not related to one of the majors. Aside from that, though, at least when reading what he went through and reading, like you mentioned, the very descriptive, my leg was sideways and then foot was turned. Okay, that's a lot. It's a lot, Brooks. I don't know that I would have had the mental fortitude to snap it back in, but I guess this is a real quote. When the kneecap already shattered, went in pretty good. It was easier. The whole process was simpler for him. So yeah, a lot of honesty and transparency, maybe too much so, from Brooks Koepka regarding the details of the injury that he went through.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing here with the. It starts off like this quote that you pointed out it starts off sounding awful, and then in the end it's like, but it was kind of good. This is what Brooks Koepka said of his knee injury. My leg was sideways and out. That sounds awful. My foot was turned out, and when I snapped it back in, because the kneecap had already shattered, it went in pretty good. It went in a lot easier. That was March of 2021. Different day and age right now, April 2023, and Brooks Koepka has a healthy lead. I don't know about you, Jimmy, but I love a story with some controversy. And we've got some controversy here. We have caddy gate, if you will. So Brooks the Slacker Koepka, his caddy, he goes by the name of Ricky Elliott. And Sage Steele, IU grad, shout out. She was on ESPN yesterday. Listen to Sage Steele just lay out what the story is with Brooks Koepka's caddy and what he might have done improperly during round 1 yesterday. Here it is.
Koepka's walking off in his caddy, Ricky Elliott. You see him there, mouthing the word 5, as in 5 iron, communicating with Woodland's caddy. So here's the thing. There's always communication. The key is here, it was caught on video, and the rule states that directly communicating which club a player would use on any given shot is considered giving advice. That is against the rules, and a caddy, of course, is an extension of the player. That is something that is not allowed. I will say this. This is from the Masters, saying, following the completion of Brooks' round, the committee questioned his caddy and others in the group about this possible incident on 15. All involved were adamant that no advice was given or requested. Consequently, the committee determined that there was no breach of the rules. So that's what the Masters has ruled, and that's what we are going to go ahead with. However, the video was the video, and it was pretty clear that there was some sort of communication.
So we've got Caddygate over here. This is just pathetic by the PGA Tour. Now, this is what's interesting, too, is giving the pass to the live guy. This would be, maybe that's what's going on here, where they're like, let's not just turn this into a full-blown controversy. But it's obvious that Brooks Koepka's caddy, Ricky Elliott, says to Woodland, either directly or to Woodland's caddy, I'm not sure, but he's like, 5, meaning he just hit a 5 iron. And you might want to do the same, Woodland, or whatever he was communicating. He was absolutely talking about which club was used. And they talked it over after the round. I don't know what story Brooks Koepka and Ricky Elliott came up with, where it's like, no, I was saying 5-hour energy. That's why Brooks is off to a great start. I don't know, 5 minutes alone. Great Pantera song right there. Maybe they were just talking metal on the golf course during round 1. This is obvious they were communicating, which is against the rules, but the tour just looks the other way on this one.
Why has golf got to get in its own way all the time? Look, I'm not saying that my frustration is necessarily with the PGA Tour as much as it is just the ultimate reactionary aspect to this. Like, two caddies are talking with one another. I won't pretend to be a master degree holder of the rules on tour of what can and cannot be done. For instance, like, I didn't know that caddies couldn't converse with one another or couldn't discuss, like, what was going on within the round, because I don't know. I mean, they're in the same group. Like, I guess, is it a competitive advantage? Is it like what's the determination there? And even if it is, now that it's turned into this big deal, it makes golf look worse because, like, oh no, nothing was said. They told us nothing was said. But there's video that shows they said something. What are we doing? Like, what really happened there? You're trying to gaslight us and say, no, they told us. They told us they didn't say anything.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to disagree with you on this one, Jimmy, because there are times that golf does get in its own way.
Sure.
Kind of like NCAA rules. Some of this is just so small and the minutia is ridiculous, and you got to stick with the big picture stuff. But I think this, communicating with another golfer, let's just say your boys, your buddies, you're in this grouping here, and let's just say it's whatever round it is, especially the final round of a big tournament like the Masters, and you say to your buddy, hey, I just used a 5 iron. You might want to do the same. Worked out for me. Like, all these other golfers competing against your boy, Like, that hurts them. That hurts their chances to win a tournament. They would like some inside information. They would like additional info that might help them out as well. So I can absolutely see why that's against the rules. So if you have this guy caught on video saying five, meaning 5 iron, how are you just looking the other way if that's in your rule book? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I mean, I guess that's my larger issue with why it's turned into another area where golf's getting its own way, because if you have the rule present, then enforce it and don't lie to everybody. And I guess as you explain that to me a little bit more, I guess I could get a beef that would be had by other players within the round or within that day's whole play per se. But the larger issue for me is if it is a rule, then enforce it the right way. And if you're not going to enforce it the right way, have a better excuse than, no, they told us they didn't say anything. People can lip read. You can see what's said there. Like, you can't hide that. And then it turns into this big deal. And then people that aren't golf fans are like, see, that's the problem with that sport. They don't even know their own rules. Like, that's what happens.
It is weird. I'm trying to come up with an equivalent, and I don't know that there is one, at least one that I can come up with off the top of my head. Because, listen, let's take football, for instance. The NFL, they have rules galore. And every now and then, there's a rule that isn't enforced. Now, what would this rule be the equivalent of? I'm not sure. That's kind of a tough judgment call right there. But there are times where the officials in the NFL just quote-unquote let them play. You know, a defensive back might get a little handsy with the wide receiver and they let it go. Or they can be super ticky-tack like Super Bowl 57 and gift the Super Bowl to your Chiefs. You know, they could do that. But you know what I'm saying, though. I know that was a cheap shot. But you know what I'm saying. Sometimes they allow you to play a little bit more and let you get away with more. I don't think that's what this is in golf. I think that's a major deal. That's inside information. That's information that can help Woodland get a stroke up on all the competition. And if that's your guy and you're helping him out, that goes against the rules. There should be a penalty. So I don't like that there wasn't a penalty, but I wonder what the thought process was that went into that. If they're thinking, hey, man, it's going to look like we're hating on the live golfer, Brooks the slacker Koepka. Like, let's just let it go and this will blow over. That might have been the way they looked at it. I don't know.
If it was the 2 caddies, though, why not just toss the 2 caddies? Like I have no idea how easy it is to find a replacement caddy. Like, that's a fair solution I would need to have to poise that argument. But if it's just the 2 caddies talking, who is to say that Kep was like, yeah, go and maybe the caddies were buddies, you know?
Well, here's the thing. I think that, remember when before the MLB season started, that JT Real Muto, the catcher of the Phillies, got tossed by that one umpire? We need umpires in golf to just give the heave to caddies that are relaying information against the rules. What do you think about that, Jim?
As long as that's their only job, that's fine. I have enough frustration with umpires as it is. Rather not have them invade another sport that I sometimes enjoy. But sure, yeah, if it's just a umpire that is playing beefed up security guard for that day, just for caddies alone, I'm down with it. That's fine.
How about this? Because we got a hodgepodge of storylines that came from day one and also day two. We hit on Brooks Koepka. What do you think the story of day one was? You could have Tiger struggling, right? A 2-over, couple of bogeys in the day. You could have old Vic Hovland in his crazy flower shirt getting a share of the lead. How about John Rahm? A 4-putt double bogey on the opening hole, and he rallies 7 birdies and an eagle to share the lead after day one. That's got to be a good one. I'll give you another one. How about this? Sam Bennett, the amateur. So he had a 4 under 68 yesterday. Didn't record a single bogey. And also this, he's got a tattoo on his wrist which reads, "Don't wait to do something." He told the Golf Channel it was the last thing his late father wrote.
Wow.
So he's got a tattoo of that on his wrist. But the amateur, he did something that hasn't been done in the last 30 years, is record a 4 under 68 the first round of the Masters. So Sam Bennett, the amateur, easy to root for as well.
Yeah, also first top 10 finish by an amateur since Ryan Moore in 2005. That was a great story. For me, my favorite, or at least the most intriguing one for me, is when John Rahm's round started and he goes, I think it was 2 over through like the first 2 or 3 holes, and then he's able to rally the way he did, where he's at one point in a share of the lead. Now, obviously, he's tied for second. He's yet to tee off today. Koepka's obviously surged ahead because he's actively playing right now, but that's one of those situations where you can learn a lot about not just the golfer's overall game, but about the mental faculties of these athletes, because it would have been very easy when you have a frustrating start at a major, particularly one as prestigious, as legendary as Augusta, to let it affect the rest of your day. Jon Rahm did the exact opposite. I think he plays 9 under the rest of the way and finishes at 7 under par to be with the leaders by the end of the round. So that was my favorite one. Another one, obviously, I was watching was Tiger. Looked like towards the end of the show that he was going to be mainly scar-free, potentially just +1, and then ends up bogeying 18, so +2 for him. He mentioned he was sore and constant pain. None of that is great. Some of that is expected. Hopefully, again, I hate to lower the bar, but I'm going to do it just for my fandom. We're just hoping for a made cut right now and see what the rest of the weekend holds.
Yeah, he's in jeopardy. He's in jeopardy right now because he's +2. And so we're thinking the cut line, maybe 1 over, somewhere 3 over. So he's right in the middle of 1 over and 3 over. So I don't know. I don't know that Tiger's going to make it. Another birdie by Brooks Koepka. So he is now at -12. He actually had a makeable eagle putt, little short, but still settled for birdie. He's got 3 birdies and an eagle on the day. So he's crushing it right now. Absolutely crushing it. All right, we'll circle back to golf throughout the show today. What's Vic Hovland going to do for an encore? With the flower shirt. Was that an azalea? I don't know what shirt, what flower was featured on his shirt. It was very colorful. Very colorful shirt over there by him.
I'm all about the style at the Masters. I view it as, I guess maybe I'm less traditional than most. I want people to be just as crazy as they can at times, the outfits, but I also like the traditional aspects as well. The red on Sunday for Tiger when it's appropriate. Some people have their classic go-to, like a little bit of a blue or a pink top. It's love in general, the flowing colors. It's the introduction to spring for a lot of people, Brian. I like to see it pop amongst the background of the azaleas at Augusta.
By the way, Brian Noe and Jimmy Cook with you here, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. What is your go-to flower of choice to buy for your loved ones there, Jimmy? What do you go with?
Usually, I'm just the stereotypical answer. Usually I go roses, but if there's a nice, a beautiful assortment of just like your pink or your just like a nice colorful assortment for the springtime, I'll go that route. Sometimes they have different flower mixtures that feature the season, so if we're in kind of fall, I'll go that route. Just depends. I like the color of the season to match the flowers I'm getting.
Okay, so it's more so the display than the flower.
Than specific flowers. But if I'm going to go-to flower, roses. Yeah.
Roses. But catching the eye. My mom likes carnations. That's her go-to, so I normally get that. My girl likes lilies. That's her go-to, but I'm a little bit like you. If you got something that catches my eye, chances are I might not know what flower it actually
right.
is. But it looks cool,
yeah.
So I just kind of, let's just roll with that,
Yep.
The funny thing is, I could go outside and dig up the first flower that I see and put it in a vase, and it'd look all horrid and nasty, and like there's dirt and grime, and I'd be like, "Here, Mom, Happy Mother's Day." And she'd be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so nice of you," right? Like, It's just she's easy to please. So that's very nice. Shout out to my mom, who's the best ever. Okay, we got to get to the tank standings over here, Jimmy. Not a good day in the association for the Indiana Pacers. Last night did not go their way. The Orlando Magic resting Paolo Banchero and every other freaking starter over there as they get blown out. They get worked by the Cleveland Cavaliers. Also, San Antonio, they almost screwed it up against Portland, which we were hoping for. We were hoping for a Blazers win, so they fall in the tank standings. But no, Dikembe style. The Spurs came roaring back in the fourth quarter. They're down, 117 to 110, and here come the Spurs. And they end up beating the Blazers. Not good for our Pacers here.
No, you can only do so much. We can only will the losses across the league within our power, and we flirted a little bit. It was a bit of a tease. Thought we were going to make some ground up. Not the case last night, and running out of time to do so, unfortunately.
I will say this, man. It is just embarrassing how many teams are just like blatantly tanking. You know what I mean? And the embarrassing part is, one, that the NBA doesn't have anything in place to curtail it. Nothing. Like, they do have the draft lottery, but I mean an additional layer to it. Remember in the NFL where Roger Goodell, he came out and he's talking about teams resting some of their players who aren't in the playoffs. And he's threatening them. He's like, we're going to fine you. We're going to take away draft picks. Like, don't even think about it.
Yep.
And in the NBA, you have just blatant tanking. Orlando rests everybody. You've got the Pacers resting their top guys. You see it around the league right now. And there's nothing, just a collective shoulder shrug and, whatever. And on top of that, you've got to give these BS reasons why your players are supposedly out. It's a total joke.
So, on the neutral, big picture NBA concept, I agree with you. I'm right there with you. It's a joke. There should be more done. Why is the league not stepping in to kind of, right this in some way, maybe have a little bit more of a strong arm like the NFL has done in these situations? From an individual fan perspective, whether I'm rooting for the Pacers, whether I'm rooting for the Magic, regardless of who I'm rooting for in this tank off that we've had ongoing for the better part of the last, at minimum, last week and a half, 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Do it. Keep doing what you're doing. Sit everybody. Say they have an illness. Like you've been doing, because I don't want to see a meaningless win. And it stinks from a product standpoint, but at this point, as a fan, if I'm an individual team guy, I don't care about the league's product. I care about my team getting as many ping pong balls as they can to try to get a generational talent.
Here's the deal, Jimmy. I think of this as parents and kids, okay? Really, I do. I look at teams as the kids. If the parents aren't saying, hey, you can't have ice cream at 10 o'clock at night, and the kids are just making the decision to have ice cream at 10 o'clock at night, I look at the parents more, right? So if there aren't rules in place to punish you for blatant tanking, right? There are not rules in place to punish you. I look at the parents, which is the league, for not having rules in place, right? I think of this like the Hack-a-Shack, right? If you look at the Hack-a-Shack, I'm not blaming the teams for saying, hey, we can just foul the worst free throw shooter off the ball and it's all good. Well, then why wouldn't we do that? I blame the league for not having a rule in place to punish you from and to prevent you from doing that. So that's how I look at tanking is, the teams, they should be taking advantage of the lack of rules by trying to lose more games, because you've got a great top pick in Wembanyama that could change the course of your entire franchise. So I absolutely understand why teams would do that. This is more a league issue, where I look at the league and say, hey, if you don't want to turn it into a horrible product, watching bad free throw shooters brick free throws, maybe have a rule discouraging the Hack-a-Shack during games. And they finally wised up a bit and did that. I look at it the same way with tanking. If you don't want to have all of the top players, teams resting all their starters, trying to lose outright, then maybe have something in place to discourage that. If they don't, I look at that being way more on the league than on the teams.
Well, and they've done as much as they can outside of really laying the hammer down of taking away draft picks, suspensions, fines. Like they've yet to dabble into those waters. I had thought, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong on this, I had thought the goal post-2019, well, I guess post-2019 draft, but they approved the changes in 2017 as I'm reviewing it here, was to shrink the way the odds are dispersed to discourage outright tanking as much as it is. And that worked for a minute, but once you get into these final 2 weeks of the season where you get a really clear understanding for where you are and what you need to do to get into the top 4 line where everybody's odds are even at number 1, at that point, the only thing the league can do now is put in suspensions, is put in fines, is take away draft picks. And I mean, yes, I'd like to see more from the league in that regard. I'm a little disappointed, though, that the idea of switching the odds and making it a little bit less incentivized to tank hasn't had the desired outcome I think the league thought they would get.
It sure hasn't. It has not, because the 3 teams with the worst records, they each have a 14% chance to get the number 1 overall pick. Okay?
It used to be
it's
25% for the top seed and 19 for second.
Yeah, so it's been dispersed differently. That's just the bottom 3 records. Think about where Indiana is, or the Wizards, or the Magic, who rested everybody last night,
Sure.
or the Blazers,
Sure.
who sat down Shaedon Sharp, one of the only good players that they have playing right now, with everybody else being shut down. Like, that doesn't do anything for those teams.
Yeah.
So, it only did so much good. You just have to have a heavier hand if you really want to discourage this. And Adam Silver is freaking spineless. Just another chapter in the book of spineless activity from Adam Silver. It's a joke. But how about this, too? Turning away from Silver to tonight's action. So the Washington Wizards, who have the same record as the Pacers, they host the Miami Heat. That is bad. That is a bad situation for the Pacers because Miami needs to win. They're currently in the play-in. They're a 7 seed as we speak. They're in 7th place. So they want to get past Brooklyn and get up to that 6th spot so they avoid the play-in. Washington, crazily, has rested pretty much anybody who's a big name, and they just have mostly their backups going. So I think Miami is probably going to work Washington tonight. Miami, by the way, Jimmy, maybe a sneak peek with your picks at the end. Miami only a 6.5-point favorite on the road against the Wizards, who want to lose. The Wizards want to lose, and Miami really, really needs to win. And Miami is way more talented roster-wise tonight based on who they're facing against the Wizards. This could easily be a boat race.
And then you flip the other side of the coin, and you have Pacers-Pistons tonight. Of course, you can catch it all here. Pregame coverage starting at 6:30.
Look at you, very nice.
Right here on 93.5, 107.5. The Fan, Mark Boyle, Pat Boylan, Eddie Gill. Should be a fun
If you don't shout out Eddie Garrison.
Eddie Garrison behind the ones and twos of that as he is right here.
And you cannot forget about Eduardo Blanco.
And you cannot forget about the world's greatest post-game show, Eddie White, dominating the airways, taking you through all of the aftermath of both Pacers-Pistons as well as the NBA landscape. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a situation where if you are Team Tank, if you are wanting the Pacers to continue to lose as many games as possible, they are almost up against a wall in these final 2 games where there's only so much that they can do in their own boathouse that will actually impact their standings. Washington should lose tonight. By all accounts, I know it's a crazy league. Miami should boat race them. They still have something to play for, like you mentioned. And with the Pacers, you're against a Piston team that, again, doesn't really have any incentive whatsoever. I guess they have wiggle room in a sense because they have locked up the number 1 spot, but yeah, your chances are dwindling if you are a part of Team Ping and wanting to see any type of growth here. They really are.
Yeah, because the Pacers are in 8th place right now of the tank standings. They're looking up at Washington, same record, but looking up at Washington. Like I said, they host Miami tonight. Miami needs to win. Bad scenario for the Pacers. You want Washington to win. Most likely that's not going to happen. And then also in 6th place, you've got Orlando. So think about this, Jimmy. Orlando on the second night of a back-to-back just got crushed last night, rested all their starters. They're at Brooklyn tonight. Brooklyn is in 6th place. The Nets need to win. So this is a horrible scenario for the Pacers tonight. It doesn't look like they're going to make up any ground. But we'll circle back to that. Coming up next, I want to turn our attention to the Colts. Interesting column I read. They're ranking divisions by their competitiveness. I want to focus in on what Yahoo specifically wrote about the Colts and their defense. This might spur some verbal hostility, verbal fisticuffs, if you will, Jimmy. That's on the way. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. A little bit later, Jimmy, I want to focus in on your talent here, because I just thought about the Nugget, talking about Jeremy Lamb from yesterday's show, where, who were we talking to that covers the Pacers yesterday?
Tony East.
Tony East did a great job. He was awesome yesterday, but he said that former Pacer Jeremy Lamb, really, really good at darts, So I want to find out what you are really talented at here. Let's focus on the Colts first, though. So I saw this article right before the show, and I wanted to bring it up because it caught my attention. It's on Yahoo Sports. It's from Tyler Greenwald, and he just wrote, ranking NFL divisions by their competitiveness before the 2023 draft. Okay? So I'll do a little bit of reading so we all are on the same page here. And I like how he wrote a couple of these things. He wrote, the only surefire way to make the NFL playoffs is to win the division. As such, it behooves teams to shoot for the top of their division rather than pray for a wild card spot. I do like the usage of behooves.
You praised that yesterday as well. Absolutely. To Tony. Yep.
It's underutilized. He writes, Tyler writes, 18 of the past 23 Super Bowl winners also won their division. How about that, Jimmy? 18 of the last 23 won their division. So we see the importance right there. Tyler goes on to write, as the NFL calendar careens toward the draft. What do you think about that? Team behooves or team careens?
Behooves.
Behooves, I would agree. Careens, not bad, though. Not bad. I think it's untapped real estate. Careens. So as the NFL calendar careens toward the draft, we took a look at each of the 8 divisions and ranked them from least to most competitive based on a composite score. To calculate this, Tyler Greenwald of Yahoo Sports writes, we looked at each team's odds to win their respective divisions from BetMGM, as well as the projected win totals. Then we built 6 determining data points. Now we get a little bit geeky here, Jimmy, but this is how they came up with this list. The odds difference between the shortest odds and each of the other 3 teams, respectively. The win total difference between the teams with the highest total and each of the other 3 teams, respectively. The average odds to win the division. Okay, so they're looking at betting odds, basically. And they're looking at one team versus the other 3 teams in its division. And we're trying to come up with the pecking order for which divisions are the most competitive, which are the least. Okay?
Yeah.
Pretty easy to tell. Now, before we get into it, one last thing that he wrote, and I love this. From where we were able to determine which divisions are truly up for grabs and which appear to be locked up months before the season begins. And then the next line, this is all subject to change, of course, depending on how the rest of the spring and summer go leading into week 1. So from all this analysis, we were able to determine which divisions appear to be locked up months before the season begins, but this, of course, is all subject to change. That makes no sense whatsoever. So not the greatest start here. So we get to number 8. He has the NFC West as the least competitive division, has the 49ers towering above the rest. Okay. In 7th place, the AFC South. He has this as one of the least competitive divisions in the NFL, Jimmy. This, I'll read it word for word. Floor is yours. There is no other team in the division who could or should compete with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're minus 150 to win the division. So that means you would have to risk $150 to win $100. So they're a healthy favorite. He goes on to write, Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback in the division, and the Jags added receiver Calvin Ridley to his pass-catching options. The Tennessee Titans are projected to be the second best team at plus 325 to win the AFC South, but fell flat in the back half of the 2022 season and lost more talent than they gained this offseason. The Houston Texans and Indianapolis Colts, meanwhile, both have bad defenses and will start either a rookie or mediocre quarterback under center. Do the Colts have a mediocre defense? They have a bad defense. The Colts did not have a bad defense last season. I know they lost some parts with Gilmore and Okereke. I know it's not the same defense, but getting Shaq Leonard back for way more games than he played last season is a big deal. You can't have the Colts as a bad defense. It's just factually incorrect.
So here's what I think happened. lot to dissect there. First, I don't disagree with the South's placement, and I do think with the caveats that they put in place as it stands right now on April 7th, 2023, the Jaguars are the favorite and the only team that should likely compete in the AFC South this year. Not going to dispute that. Not going to dispute that right now in my mind.
I'll push back.
I know you're going. But
you keep going.
To your point, though, I feel like because the AFC South as a whole is so uninteresting that they ran out of, like, they had to mention every team, so they ran out of things to point to. You could have left it at, and they're going to have either a rookie or mediocre quarterback under center and left the defense out there. The bad defense part, I'll push back on. There's still question marks around this defense. There's a lot of voids to fill, particularly at the cornerback slot without Stephon Gilmore making that trade, obviously, with the Dallas Cowboys. And as you mentioned, already losing Okereke. I need to see a full healthy season from Shaq Leonard, but again, you're hoping that is the case this season. Unlike last year, it was still another up and down campaign where you didn't see much, if at all, of him. Bad defense is too strong for me, though. I think that's just we didn't do much research on the Colts. We need to throw something in there. So yeah, we'll add bad defense in there, lump them in with the Texans, and be on our way.
Yeah. Listen, if we look at the Titans, let's not forget that the Jags and Titans met in Week 18, and that was basically a de facto playoff game. It was whoever won that game was going to win the division and go to the playoffs. It literally came down to the final game of the season between the Jags and Titans. So we can't overreact and say, oh, yeah, it's clearly Jacksonville. Yeah, they're the favorites, but to make it sound like these other three teams borderline have zero chance whatsoever, that's just crazy to me. We see weird stuff happen all the time in the NFL where you're like, that team came from there. We see worst to first happen routinely in the NFL. So, yeah, the Jags were the class of the AFC South last season, but it wasn't by leaps and bounds. It came down to a close win at home against Joshua Dobbs as the starting quarterback of the Titans, who had barely been there for a couple of weeks.
Sure.
And now they're just the class of the division. I think that just goes way too far.
So, again, and you can push back against this as you should if you disagree with me on it. The way I see it is as such. This is year number 3 now for Trevor Lawrence. I believe after the massive leap last year and with a competent coaching staff around him, a la Doug Peterson, who, by the way, even though he doesn't have every single accolade you could have, he does have a Super Bowl under his credit, is one of the best minds in the sport right now. I don't argue that at all with Doug Peterson. He is an excellent creator, particularly on the offensive end. They had Calvin Ridley after a year's suspension with the gambling issue. I mean, don't worry. They acquire him via a trade with Atlanta. You still have Christian Kirk there. You still have Zay Jones as a weapon as well. That combined with Peterson and looking at the rest of the offense around the AFC South, I'm willing to not disagree with your point that worst to first happens. It does. Happens almost every year. Don't think it happens in the South this year.
Well, you might be right about that because you're talking about the Texans going from worst to first. That's with the rookie quarterback, presumably, that's a tall order right there. But here's the other part of this is if you look at the Titans, yeah, they lost their final 7 games. But a lot of that, I know we don't have Air Tannehill, as I call him. We don't have Ryan Tannehill rated as one of the top quarterbacks. He's a lot better than Malik Willis and also Joshua Dobbs.
Sure.
Like, he's just been there for a lot longer. He's done a lot more in the NFL. That's just not a debate. So not having Ryan Tannehill in there, that's a big deal. I know he's not a household name and all that, but it's still a big deal. And it does remind me, it's not the same exact thing, Jimmy, but a little bit like it reminds me of the Ravens. So 2 years ago, they started off hot. They were 8-3. They lost Lamar Jackson. They lost out. They were 8-9. And then you fast forward to this season, Baltimore was right back in it. They started out hot. About the same record. They were 7-3 to start the season. So if you look at the Titans getting healthier, maybe having Derrick Henry more throughout the season, having Ryan Tannehill, the Titans can absolutely compete with the Jags to win the division. I think it's a little bit too, you tell me if this is ridiculous or not. I don't think it is, but you might, listeners might. I look at, remember the college basketball game when IU was at Northwestern during the season?
Yep.
And the first half on the road, they were just awful.
Yep.
And then they came on like gangbusters at the end and barely lost. If you flip-flop the Titans season, let's just say they had this sucky start to the season like IU in the first half at Northwestern, and then came on down the stretch. They're winning games, and they just barely fall short of the playoffs. I think it's a completely different vibe with the Titans this season. So I would just caution people, don't let the order of the strong first half, the bad second half throw you off. It's a brand new year. And at the end of the day, like, this team still has some talent. So I wouldn't let the order of the season completely lead you to believe that the way they left off in a bad way, that's the only way it's going to continue going forward. That's not necessarily the case in the NFL.
And that's a fair point. I guess my larger issue, and I'm willing to be transparent and honest about this, I often do have quarterback and offensive blinders on, and I look at the type of leap that you're going to need from Treylon Burks. It was a lot to ask of him as a rookie to try to replace A.J. Brown right out of the gate. That's not even taking into account your other point, which is Ryan Tannehill's absence at times throughout the back half of that season and not having him at all down the stretch and needing to rely on Malik Willis and who was it that they signed up? Joshua Dobbs. So yeah, again, that's not fully fair to the other weapons on offense, accompanied with the Derrick Henry injuries. But I look at just the overall rumors and vibes around the Titans right now, the early rumors to start the offseason that maybe they were shopping around Derrick Henry. And looking today at the lack of offensive weapons around Ryan Tannehill, I don't see much improvement from your ceiling that you've seen from them, which is at its height when there was no other real pushback against them. It's a number one seed in the AFC. Now you have another heavyweight, or at least rising heavyweight, in the Jaguars. I would feel comfortable with their ranking of betting the minus 150 on Jacksonville to win the South right now. I wouldn't lose a ton of sleep at it.
Yeah, hey, I might have encouraged you to do exactly that during or after the show. I don't know. I just look at, I think the Titans and the Ravens, they aren't quite like the Spider-Man meme where they're both Spider-Men or pointing at one another. Yeah. But a lot of similarities, right? We know that Lamar Jackson is better than Ryan Tannehill. We do know that. But you look at the rest of the roster, it's like physical teams, right? Big-time running games. Yeah. Banged up quite a bit, both teams, because they play such a physical style of football. Look at the wide receivers to throw to. It leaves a lot to be desired collectively from those wide receiving cores. So I think they're pretty comparable. But again, both those teams, they play a style that I think limits their ceiling, lowers their ceiling, but it also heightens their floor. Defense travels. Playing hard-nosed, physical style of football, it travels well. So those teams, they're good enough to be in the thick of things, but their ceiling is, I think, limited because just the style they play, it sometimes does put a hurdle in their own way when they're so banged up at the worst time of the season. But the point is, they're not a team that you can just scratch off and say, no, we're probably good. They're not going to compete for the division. I think both the Ravens, if Lamar is back there, and the Titans will repeat for their respective divisions.
And I want to flip this one other way to kind of round things out with you. When you look at, though, and this is just one ranking system, right? This is not a ranking system that you and I put together. But as you look through the rest of the article and where they have those rankings, I have a hard time moving the South in any direction. I feel like they're not going to be the easiest clear front-running division, but when you look at the rest of the metrics in this list, I like where the South is. I don't really disagree with the idea that it could very well be a one-horse race when I compare it to the rest of the divisions in front of them.
Well, hey, man, I hear you. The funny thing is, while we're talking about the South, that's the one division that had a team go from worst to first.
Yes, it did.
It just happened with Jacksonville.
But it's the only one that, and this is going to be slightly disrespectful to Mike Vrabel, and I apologize for it, but I can't get around it. It's the only team in the division that added a Super Bowl winning head coach and had a proposed franchise quarterback, elite franchise quarterback in their midst that finally put together a high-level season. That does not exist anywhere else in the South right now.
Well,
and it didn't last year either.
Unless the Colts get willed to throw Levis.
Correct, yes, and then they're instantly right there. Yep.
That changes everything. Okay, coming up next, we circle back to Jimmy's talents, wide array. I don't know which one he's going to pick from right there. We'll find that out. And also, a couple of interesting fun NFL facts that, if you just read and read and read, every now and then I read something, I'm like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. I'll share that with you right around the corner. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. 93.5, 107.5, The Fan. Okay, before we get to your wide array of talent here, Jimmy, I was reading some of these NFL. I love the NFL, man, like no other. So I'm a junkie. I'll read columns, articles, whatever you got, I'm reading it. But I read this. This goes back to the column we were just discussing about the most and least competitive divisions heading into the 2023 season. There are a couple of interesting nuggets. So in the NFC South, going to have 4 new starting quarterbacks. Brady's retired. Probably going to have C.J. Stroud over there at Carolina. So I guess they consider Desmond Ridder a different starting quarterback, even though he started toward the end of the regular season for the Falcons. But whatever. The stat is all 4 teams will start a new quarterback in week 1. That's the thing. A first for a single division since 1973. We haven't seen a full division do that. Now, we did have, technically, realignment in 2002 where you have these 8 divisions of 4 teams across the NFL. We used to have 5 teams. The old AFC Central, I think, had 6 teams for a little while. So that goes into it. But still, got to go all the way back to 73 where you found all new starting quarterbacks in week 1 for a single division. That's pretty crazy to me.
Anytime you have a historical nugget like that, I'm all about it. The list we talked about earlier regarding which divisions would be least and most competitive, NFC South is ranked 3rd by that metric for a lot of the same reasons that you just mentioned. Yesterday, you asked me which teams I was least interested in watching. I mentioned one of the teams in this division in the New Orleans Saints, but you could really point to any of them. The Falcons, the Buccaneers, and the only thing that keeps the Panthers out of my mouth is the idea of a new shiny toy at quarterback for them and what that could look like, assuming it is projected right now to be C.J. Stroud, but whether it's Bryce Young or whoever it is, the shiny new toy will always get my attention in the early goings of the regular season.
Yeah, not exactly must-see TV.
No.
Also, this nugget here, the NFC North, they have that as the most competitive division. The Lions, they're favored to win it. That would be the first time they won the NFC North since 1993. I think about that. But just winning your division, it hasn't happened in 30 years for the Lions. Wow.
Your heart goes out to the Lions, and this is finally a silver lining or open window opportunity in their mind, right? They know the Vikings are still there with Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson and Dalvin Cook, and they realize that all this noise is made about the Chicago Bears. You're expecting a massive, barring lottery and lightning striking yet a 3rd time in the last 30 years for the Packers. You're expecting a massive step back from them with Jordan Love under center. This is as good a year as any for the Lions to finally get it done.
By the way, taking a left turn from that, Victor Hovland is just teed off at the Masters. Very disappointing day 2 shirt selection here. He went from the wild flower arrangement in day 1 on his shirt to just one single color. I can't tell. It looks kind of like light brown to me. I'm not quite sure what color it is, but it's just one color. He's like, let's go with this as the follow-up to day 1. All right. Very muted today for Victor Hovland. By the way, 1 minute left before we talk some draft stuff here. The talent of Jimmy Cook. What is at the top of the list? Non-radio wise, because you're crushing it radio wise.
Thank you.
Yeah, nothing related to a microphone in front of your face. What are you talented at there, Jimmy? And I bring this up because Tony East, who covers the Pacers, he mentioned that former Pacer Jeremy Lamb is really, really good at darts. So it just got me thinking, well, what's the go-to talent for you, Jimmy Cook?
I don't have darts. I don't have bowling. And I'm not saying I'm playing against like top tier of this particular talent. If I did, I'd probably get my, what handed to me, but relatively good mini golf player. Really good at finding the right angles on the putting surface. Not so much the rest of my golf game, but capable of knocking down a big putt when needed.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Jimmy Nails Cook.
There you go.
When it comes to a miniature golf.
Sure.
All right.
What about you?
I can throw a football. I can play a guitar. That's what I can do. That's about it as far as talent goes.
Eddie?
Yeah, Eddie. Really?
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That's a fun one.
Cornhole.
What is it? The spin? You do anything fancy that gives you a leg up on the competition?
Oh, I know how to strategically place bags. I know how to push bags. I can airmail.
Wow. Okay.
If I really wanted to practiced this like day in and day out, I wholeheartedly believe I could competitively play cornhole.
That's awesome.
Really?
Yeah.
Are we going to see you on the deuce one of these days?
No, the Ocho, you will not see me on the Ocho.
Okay. All right, coming up next, let's talk to a dude named Thor. He covers the NFL draft, college football analyst. Thor Nystrom is on the way. We'll talk Colts and beyond. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. We'll get to, was Eddie Garrison ripped off, or is he trying to work the system a little bit later today? We'll say in about 15 minutes or so. But let's talk to a dude named Thor. Thor Nystrom, NFL draft / college football analyst. He's at FantasyPros. And if you didn't catch, I didn't catch it myself, but Eddie Garrison said, if you don't know, it's the Avengers theme song right there. With, of course, the name Thor. Are you an Avengers fan there, Thor?
Of course. How could I not be?
I feel like I got to ask you, how much do you bench? If you're a guy named Thor, I feel like you could throw some weight around there.
I'd rather have the gifts that I put out on Twitter benching for me. I might not bench as much as the movie character, but yeah, we do okay. I'm lucky I wasn't born 5'5" with that name for sure.
Are we talking like if we're repping out at the combine? Are we talking like what 10, 12 reps of 225 right now?
We'll toss up 25 of them.
Wow, that's what I'm saying, Thor. That's it right there. Now I want to know what specifically is the most interesting storyline for you regarding the NFL draft. So don't just give me all quarterbacks in general, but is there specifically you think C.J. Stroud probably going to Carolina? Maybe Bryce Young goes to Houston. What specifically is it? Is it Anthony Richardson, Will Levis? Where is it for you?
Yeah, this is going to be a really fun draft because we still don't know. I thought I knew that the Panthers were in on C.J. Stroud, but they might just be putting out smoke screens, as far as some of this stuff. But some people you talk to will now swear that their guy is Bryce Young. Some will say that it's Anthony Richardson. It seems like Anthony Richardson's camp thinks that there's a decent shot that he could go number one. So it's still a 3-horse race with less than 3 weeks to go until day one. And then, however, it's going to be quarterback, presumably. Then it gets really interesting with Arizona. Do they end up trading that slot to a team that's going to take a quarterback? And then obviously Indianapolis sitting in that 4th slot is very intrigued by all the different stuff going on above them.
Thor, a lot of people, when they look at mock drafts, they look at player comps, they misunderstand the purpose of the comp. They misunderstand what the writer or what the draft analyst is going for when they make comps next to an unproven draft prospect. For you, what message are you trying to convey when you make those comparisons? For instance, CJ Stroud as a Justin Herbert comp, Bryce Young as Russell Wilson comp in a piece you had on Fantasy Pros earlier this week. What are you trying to illustrate with the comps?
You're just trying to put the closest picture that you can in for the reader in their head as far as who that player could be, but you bring in a whole bunch of different things with it. You bring in their measurables, the way that they test similar athletic profiles, and then the way that they play as well. And then you're also trying to sort of hit it with the career progression that you think the kid's going to have. Because if it's a guy that you think is going to be UDFA, but he sort of plays like a poor man's version of a guy who's been in multiple Pro Bowls or whatever, you can't really do that as the comp because it's misleading. So you try to bake all those different things in and a lot of moving parts. But yeah, it's one of my favorite things because before I did this work, I love comps just as a fan, and so I love putting out a whole bunch of put out 500 on my 500 player big board. It's coming out in a couple weeks on Fantasy Pros.
He's Thor Nystrom from Fantasy Pros joining us here on The Fan. Thor, what's the most outlandish pick that you've seen in a mock draft where your reaction is that clearly is not going to be happening here?
Hendon Hooker in the first round. I would still be surprised if it did, and it's coming right to my doorstep here in Minneapolis because people have been mocking Hendon Hooker to the Vikings. I wouldn't understand that one at all. To me, Hendon Hooker's more of a round 3 guy. He's going to be 26 during his rookie year. We don't even know if he's going to play during his rookie season because of the ACL thing. And then there's reasons to be concerned about his on-field profile. That he didn't succeed as a passer until starting his second to last season when he had to come in off the bench for Joe Milton, the kid he had lost the job to coming out of camp. Hendon Hooker had come from Virginia Tech where he had never shown the throwing element, but he finally started to succeed. Once he came in for Milton off the bench. But it was in this offense where everything is spoon fed for you. Hendon Hooker, it's so interesting watching his tape. When he gets the ball, it's not just that it's the one side of the field. He will actually just immediately square his shoulders to that side of the field. The other side of the field is just not even available. It's not even an option. Sometimes those Tennessee receivers weren't even running routes on that side. So it's a bit of a leap of faith to assume that he can then go through the full field progressions in the NFL. We have literally never seen that. So it is a total leap of faith. And then the other thing is he's a dual threat. He is a good runner. He can get the ball deep, but he doesn't use those things in conjunction. 155 times the last 2 years he was moved off his spot. According to PFF, only completed 7 passes in those 155 occurrences.
Thor, let's say, just for the sake of argument, the Colts don't take a quarterback at 4. That's been our assumption, is that that's what they're going to do. I'm not even talking about trading back. Let's just say they go best available. When you look at guys like Will Anderson Jr., when you look like Jalen Carter, in your analysis, are we talking about generational type players on that side of the ball?
Well, yeah, in terms of on the field, for sure. I mean, Carter, we just don't see talents like that come into the league every single year. That kid is unblockable when he's on. And then Will Anderson's the other good one, but I'd put Will Anderson a solid, half a tier down from Jalen Carter just in terms of overall utility. When you're talking about the 4 slot, those would be the only 2 other guys that I would even consider there. There's obviously other attractive prospects, but those 2 guys would stand out above the rest for sure.
How about overrated QBs? Of the top 5 rated QBs, who do you think is the most overrated guy?
Well, it would be Levis for me, although it seems like now people are starting to wake up to some of these different things that we've been talking about since, when he was playing or whatever like that. I love the arm, and he does have some of the athleticism in that sort of prototypical frame. He went to Penn State as their, running quarterback guy, the same position that Tommy Stevens had been in before him. But the thing is, with his passing, everybody knows that he has mechanical inconsistencies. It's more like a mechanical nonchalance with him because sometimes he just doesn't set his feet or square his shoulders to the target, even in clean pockets. When he does have that stuff going, the accuracy plays way up. So you can understand why people are like, oh, just fix that and convince him to every time be mechanically sound. His arm's going to play way up. But the issue with him is he lacks pocket presence. He just doesn't, he can't feel when that rush is coming. So he gets ragdolled in the pocket all the time. His conversion rate of pressure to sacks, one of the highest in this class. And when he does recognize the pressure late, if he's not getting sacked, generally he makes a mistake with the ball. And where it gets a bridge too far for me with him is how are you going to, just suppose that you're going to be able to fix the mechanics when every time he's under duress, he's panicking. He forgets that stuff even when he's in clean pockets. So that's why he's riskier for me. And then I brought up Hendon Hooker before. Those would be the two guys in the class where I'm just lower on than everybody else, I guess.
Thor Nystrom of FantasyPros, nice enough to make some time with us here on the Fan. Thor, conversely, the other potential option at quarterback for the Colts at 4 is Anthony Richardson. The main mark against him has been the accuracy issue at times. You'd like to see that maybe as many as 5, 6, 7 and above points higher on his accuracy percentage at the next level. When you look at what you outlined with Levis plus the marks against Richardson, is either one an easier fix, or are they both truly project guys that are going to take a little bit of grooming to get where their ceiling could be?
In a lot of ways, they're both projects in terms of just they're not finished products yet. So, they need work, whatever, and then what do they become on the other side of that? But I would far prefer Anthony Richardson to Levis, both because the ceiling is, very clearly higher. You don't need to be an expert to know that. Anthony Richardson coming into the league with an unprecedented size, speed, the athleticism score for his size, whatever, had the perfect 10 on the RAS. But I also think he's a little bit less risky than he's been commonly depicted. Everyone talks about his accuracy percentage. What I prefer to look at is the on target percentage with those quarterbacks. His on target percentage is more than acceptable. His receivers stunk last year at Florida, and he was learning to hit the 4th straight offense for the 4th straight year under a 4th different offensive coordinator. 4 different ones in 4 years. 4 different quarterback coaches in 4 years. 3 different head coaches in 4 years. There's reasons to explain some of this stuff, and then he's learning the new system, and then the receivers he threw to last year, there was a lot of balls clanging off hands and stuff like that. So I think his accuracy is a bit better than people think. Still, obviously needs a lot of work on that, which is just the consistencies with his mechanics, because he's another guy when the mechanics are on, the accuracy plays way up. The other thing I'd say difference between him and Levis is, while Levis, he panics when he's in the pocket under duress. Anthony Richardson, he's nonplussed about it. He doesn't care. Like a free rusher, there can even be 2 free rushers on him within just a couple strides of him. Anthony Richardson doesn't panic at all because he knows he has the athleticism to get out of any sticky situation that he's in on the field. Go back to that 2-point conversion in the opener against Utah when Utah had the 2 free rushers on the right side, and the play concept called for Richardson to drift right into him. Utah had him dead to rights. Richardson gets away from both of them. He did that pirouette in midair with the pump fake to get rid of the one guy. Then he runs around the other one. Utah didn't have enough guys back. They blitzed too many guys. So then Richardson hits a wide open guy in the end zone. I love that stuff with him. And the rushing utility, obviously. So I think that the floors, I think, like I said, I think Richardson a little bit higher in terms of that than is commonly depicted. And the ceiling certainly is way higher than Levis.
How about the Colts at number 4? There's been a debate around here where they should move up to number 3. Some say you should stick with the 4th overall pick. If the board falls, and we know there are a lot of variables, but if the board falls where a combination of Stroud and Young go 1-2, we know it depends on where the Colts have Levis and Richardson rated. But what do you think in general of the argument of either moving up to 3 or staying at 4?
I wouldn't make the Cardinals put me to a decision on that. Like, I haven't heard anything to indicate that the Cardinals are close to a deal with another team. I wouldn't even consider it until that possibility is out there. So I'd make the Cardinals do the work on that end. You don't want to be in a situation like, remember the Bears that year with the 49ers where they gave the 49ers stuff so they could move up one spot to take Mitch Trubisky? It was just totally unnecessary, and it seemed like they sort of got leverage into that, whatever. In this situation, I'd wait around. But if, like in the Colts building, I'm under the supposition that most of the football guys in there, that they prefer Richardson to Levis in that case. But, it depend on how far they are apart. But if you do have one guy that is tangibly above the other one, at the point where the Cardinals come to you and they're like, hey, we're going to take this other deal from this quarterback-needy team, we just wanted to see if you guys would put anything out there to give us another possibility. That's when I'd consider it, but I certainly wouldn't be jumping head over heels to make that deal before the Cardinals have done their due diligence and bring another deal to you.
Thor, I know your most recent piece on FantasyPros, Thor Nystrom, nice enough to join us here on The Fan, went through the first 2 rounds of the draft with player comps and was where you thought they might end up. Another critique among the Colts, they obviously have a need to fill at cornerback, but I'm a more offensive-minded guy. I love fun weapons, love fun toys there for a young quarterback. When you look at second-round wide receivers and beyond, where would be the most upside or the best value that the Colts could find as this draft unfolds?
As far as receiver at the cornerback position.
Wide receiver, I apologize, yeah.
Yeah, with receiver, where the Colts are sitting at the top of round 2, it's a really interesting spot as far as this receiver class goes, because this receiver class is different than the last 3-4 years where it's way down. Like, we don't have, we had some, like, unprecedented type receiver class coming, like, one after the other where it's like, oh, my God, it's like the one class was like, hold my beer to the last class. It just kept getting better and better. This year we take a step way back with that receiver class, but with where the Colts are sitting in round 2, that's the good spot to be in, because assuredly one of these guys is going to filter down. Whether it's one of those top 4 guys, like I think there's a shot that Jordan Addison could get into round 2, which is a possibility that no one would have considered a couple months ago. But because of the measurables, he did not test very well for a guy as skinny as he is. But if he gets out of the first round, he's not going to have to wait long. On Friday, the Colts might be his floor. But even, you look outside of that, Jalen Hyatt's going to be there. Josh Downs is going to be there. I like Marvin Mims. Different guys like that. So there's going to be guys that you could potentially get, even Cedric Tillman. Actually, it's funny, I comp Cedric Tillman to Michael Pittman, so maybe that one would be a little bit redundant. But, whether you take one there or whether you trade down. And the cornerback class is sort of different, where the cornerback class in this one is absolutely stacked. So it's less the moving parts. You know that you're guaranteed a really good one there if you were to pick in that slot. But the receiver one, you do have a shot of one of those 4 guys potentially getting down there. But if not, there are a couple guys that would still be juice worth the squeeze at that pick.
Hey, Thor, appreciate the time, man. Before you go, we were kicking around the talent or skill that you have not related to your gig. It was related to a former Pacers player who's really good at darts. So what is the talent or skill that you have on your resume not related to anything you do with Fantasy Pros there, Thor?
Oh, gosh. I'm trying to think. My whole world is this stuff. It feels like. I don't even know what I would be if not for this. I guess arguing with people on Twitter is what I would do.
There you go. Absolutely. Well, Thor, appreciate the time, man. We're inching closer to the draft, and enjoy schooling the Twitter trolls in the meantime, huh?
Appreciate you, boys. Good talking to you.
Thanks, Thor.
Yep. Thank you. There he is, Thor Nystrom, NFL draft, college football analyst at Fantasy Pros. Good stuff right there. By the way, the Masters, we'll circle back to the draft in a second. The Masters, it reminds me of Indiana. Does it not? Like, yesterday was just gorgeous. The beginning of today, just gorgeous there at Augusta. And now you're starting to see the dark rain clouds. And just give it 5 minutes. That's what we always hear about Indiana. That's the Masters this weekend.
There is just, like I stressed yesterday, a lot of happiness on my face with the Masters arriving, a lot of just excitement of Easter Sunday at Augusta. And then you look at this year's weather forecast. I know we joked a little bit about it yesterday, but yes, it's a great player comp, but state comp instead by you. It's looking very much like Indiana-style weather right now out there.
Oh, it totally is. I can't tell you how many times friends will come visit me, and I'm like, dude, you might want to take a coat. And they look at me like I have 9 heads. They're just like, it's beautiful right now. I'm like, dude, just trust me, okay? And sure enough, or like, hey, you might want to bring an umbrella or like a hazmat suit. You know what I mean? Like, The weather's just crazy over here. Okay, so as far as, I found a few things interesting with Thor right there. One, he's a sheep. He's anti-Levis over here. But like, here's my thing. You can point to Levis lacking pocket awareness, maybe panicking in the pocket. I mean, the first thing I thought of, it wasn't as bad, Jimmy, as remember David Carr with the Houston Texans. It wasn't as bad at Kentucky as it was with D. Carr with the Texans when he was the number 1 overall pick. But it wasn't leaps and bounds better. And what's interesting is we looked at David Carr at Houston and we're like, this guy has no chance, right? You got to give him some protection. He's got no offensive line. He's taking a beating. That's just the tone of what we said about David Carr. And yet somehow at Kentucky, when the walls are just crashing in on Will Levis, he lacks pocket awareness. He panics in the pocket. This freaking guy. Like, that's just the way it typically goes with Will Levis.
I mean, look, I'll say a couple things, right? So I have a handful of hidden talents that I'm, I guess, still able to work on in my free time. It's pretty clear that I lead into that to say with Thor's answer on the hidden talents, it's pretty clear, like a lot of draft analysts, that his entire just existence right now is geared towards this. So when I come at you with a more casual approach of, look, the read on him right now is he holds onto the ball too long and he doesn't sense presence of pressure on his either side of the ball, or either side of the field rather, as well. That's one thing, right? I'm just telling you what I've read and kind of what I've seen from the brief games of his that I've seen. When you hear somebody that has dove a little bit deeper into the film have a similar evaluation but go deeper of, he has happy feet a lot of the time. It's a lot of placement issues with him. I'm willing to say, maybe, Brian, I don't agree with the sheep argument, but I wouldn't say sheep. I would say leader there, because that's a very informed opinion based on the film that he's seen. Whether he's right or wrong, it's still an opinion, just like your Will the Thrill Levis t-shirt line is just an opinion-based slogan right there. Thor doesn't know that for a fact, but he has a little bit more, I guess, observational data that he's seen than I have, as someone that you have painted as a sheep at times for my dislike of Will Levis.
Okay, here's what I would say to that. Big freaking deal, okay? There are plenty of guys, you can watch all the tape in the world. You can spend hours and hours and hours and still screw up your evaluation. It happens all the time.
Again, I'm not saying he's gospel, to be clear. I'm just saying a relatively informed opinion, hard to say sheep with the type of just analysis that he provided there.
Okay, fine. You push back on the sheep thing, whatever. I heard Thor Nystrom sound like everybody else about Will the Thrill Levis. It's oddly similar to Josh Allen. When he was coming out of Wyoming, we talked about this before. There was a list from The Ringer heading into the 2018 NFL Draft, and they ranked their top quarterback prospects. And a lot of these people who watched a lot of tape and broke it down, they didn't have Josh Allen in their top 5. They had dudes like Kenny Trill and Kyle Lauletta ranked ahead of Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Some of them had Josh Allen not even ranked. They said anybody else than Josh Allen. So it could be the
happens
same
all the
thing
time.
with Levis.
It happens all the time. And I could make the same points, even though you're right. There feels like there's more public pushback with Levis than there is Richardson, but a lot of the same flaws and critiques that people point to Anthony Richardson, you could be using him in that same Josh Allen analogy by the time it's all said and done. They're both project quarterbacks. They both need different things to work on. For me, I do look at the upside of Richardson and I see all the tools that he has and think to myself, man, you know what? If the accuracy issue can be fixed, and if it was someone on the receivers there, much like Will Levis struggled with in Kentucky, maybe that's a project that does have a higher ceiling. That's not
Jimmy,
a big leap
he
for me.
validated earlier in that conversation. What I've been trying to tell you is that the accuracy issues with Anthony Richardson aren't big deal. It's not a huge.
It's not as big as people are making it out to be.
Flaw that you make it sound out to be every time you bring him up, because you're like, oh, if you can fix the accuracy issues, and I know that's the biggest knock that you want to point to, but like
it does have to be fixed though. It's not a there's a fine line between everything is his receiver's fault and the point that even Thor brought up, which is that there is room for improvement. Like maybe it's not a massive red flag as maybe I've painted it or others have painted it to be. But there is a needed room for improvement, even if it is, it was all his receiver's fault.
And then the quarterback that you guys previously just named, Josh Allen, look at his completion percentage from rookie year to now.
Right. Yeah.
Like it's gone up, 5-6 points percentage-wise?
And that's back to Brian's overall point, right, Brian, is that even as we're projecting this out right now, it is going to take more than one season of work to really get a read of what these either project side, whether you're Team Levis or Team Richardson, is going to pan out to be.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to it. I just love all of these draft stories. Thor mentioned the Niners making that trade with the Bears.
You've mentioned
Bears
that.
move up. Yeah, I've mentioned it a lot, but the Bears moved up one spot to number 2 overall to get Mitch Trubisky. I would just love to hear that conversation. You know what I mean? I would just love to have heard the 49ers phone ringing.
Yeah.
And the Bears saying, we'll give you 2 third-round picks and a 4th-round pick to move up one spot. You can still draft the defensive player you were targeting anyway. And they're like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Like, that's fine. Like, and then all these other stories where we go back to your guy Mahomes.
Yeah.
The Saints wanted Mahomes.
Yep.
This goes back to 2017. And you think about Drew Brees, he played through the 2020 season. So we're talking 17, 18, 19, 20. He played 4 more years after that draft. Think about Mahomes. If he was just sitting there like Jordan Love, maybe not for 4 years, but for a couple of years, Drew Brees was still playing really good football. and he was one pick away. The Chiefs moved up to number 10 to get Mahomes. Number 11, the Saints took Marshawn Lattimore, who's been a very good cornerback. But think about that. Think, where would we be right now if the Saints somehow ended up with Mahomes backing up Breeze for a couple of years?
There would be no happiness in this talk show host right here. There would be no enjoyment of raising even one Lombardi trophy if Mahomes is not in Kansas City. I could say that with the utmost confidence. And to your point, there's been more nuggets that have come out about the drafting of Mahomes over the years. He went on the New Heights podcast in December, mentioned that he had referenced the Chiefs, hey, look, like, I don't know who's going to take me, but if you let me go past here, I'm probably not going to still be there. And then the pieces that came out after the draft were the secrecy that was involved. Buffalo thought they were going to take a linebacker when they traded up with them. Like, if you are going to have a poker hand, if you're one of these teams that aren't the Colts, but are the Raiders or somebody further down that wants to trade with Arizona, you have to keep everything so close to the chest. Otherwise, it turns into a bidding war that might be too big of an asking price for you.
Are you serious? That's what the Bills thought?
Yeah, the consensus around most war rooms was that the Chiefs were trading up to take a linebacker or traded to get a defensive player. The thought was not quarterback.
Wow. They're moving up 17 spots to get a linebacker? Yep. Really?
Yep. Again, I mean, now look, how much the Bills believe that. I mean, they made the trade, but the Chiefs were not outwardly we're taking a quarterback right now.
No.
But the thought was, again, they had consistent playoff appearances. They were dominating the AFC West. They just need to shore up their defense, right? Alex Smith's been fine. Why would they take a quarterback? There's always surprises like that throughout the NFL draft. Maybe not every time for the big shiny quarterback, but that's the beauty of trading up and why we've joked about signing an NDA to go sit in one of these war rooms. I don't care if it's for a quarterback or if it's for a wide receiver in round 3. Just what goes into that and just the ultimate poker hand of, yes, we got our guy.
I would love to hear it. I really would love, short of hearing it live with my own 2 ears, just do a hard knock style of the draft, you know? Like, let these teams have final say of what's revealed, what isn't. Chances are they wouldn't want any of this stuff out there because they wouldn't want it to come back to bite them. Can you imagine a conversation between two teams? They work out a trade. It works out great for one team, and the other team just gets fleeced or moves down and misses out on a stud. They wouldn't want that around. I would love to hear it, but it's probably never going to happen. I just think this, too. When you're in the moment, there are plenty of picks where you say, what are they doing? Why would they do that? And then a couple of years later, you're like, oh, that's why. Yeah. If the Saints had drafted Patrick Mahomes with Drew Brees still playing really good football, people would have been like, what are they doing right now? And it would have turned out to be brilliant.
And they did the same thing to Kansas City. Like there was tons of backlash nationally about the idea that they would try to get a replacement for Alex Smith with where he was at his career at that point, and that they would do it when they were, again, knocking on the door perceivedly. If you talk to Chiefs fans, I never felt like they were really threatening to go win a Super Bowl, maybe squeak into an AFC championship game. But yeah, there was the same backlash. Saints would have gotten the same thing, maybe even worse, like you mentioned, having a Hall of Famer and Drew Brees still under center and still with a couple of years left, even though they weren't all shiny years for Drew Brees.
Okay, at the end of this hour, we will get to Eddie Smooth Criminal Garrison trying to work the system a little bit. But coming up next, Will Haskett from PGA Tour Radio. There's a lot we got to discuss. Storylines galore at the Masters. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Fan.
I'm Brian No. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. I feel like I'm supposed to speak in hushed tones right now.
I asked Eddie to play this yesterday, but I'm very thankful he did it today.
Yeah.
For our next guest. It's very, very apropos of one Eddie Garrison.
I feel like I'm looking at azaleas. To 11. I feel like I'm looking at, it's weird because I'm thinking of Victor Hovland's crazy flower shirt now. Those are the images I get when I hear that. Now, I want to welcome in Will Haskett, PGA Tour Radio. You know, what's the feeling you get, Will, when you hear the Masters music?
The only broadcast I've ever done in my career where I felt like I actually altered my delivery to meet the sort of the mood or the ambiance. I'm dead serious. Like when I've had the honor of broadcasting it, it was hushed tones. You know, you're not supposed to get too up and too sort of down. It feels like less words per minute. I'm a fast talker by nature, but I was a little bit slower. All of the things that come with it. I mean, there's a million different ways that you can go with what you think of when you hear the song. I think big, green, and great golf. And we've seen some great golf so far through a day and a half, and maybe we get the rest of the day in, but I don't think it's going to happen later on this afternoon.
Yeah, man, it's crazy with the weather. How about Brooks Koepka? He's leading at -12 right now. Would you go with Koepka as the story of the tournament thus far, or would you go in a different direction?
100%. It has to be Brooks Koepka. And I think last week, he won the third live event of the year in Orlando, and it just kind of showed that there was a little fire in him to rev things up to get ready for the weeks that he really cares about, and those are major championship weeks. And then, from tee to green today, I think he missed one fairway. His irons were on point. He left a few putts short in the back nine, but really made everything that he was supposed to make. Absolute clinical right now. And because of some attrition from some guys that were behind him, it's a 5-shot lead right now. And one of the guys he has a lead over is still in school at Texas A&M. So, it's crazy what he's able to do. And if in the next, there's starting to be some storms and some showers popping up around the area. Look, if something pops up and the guys that are just getting their round started right now, John Rahm, Victor Hovland, who are 5 shots back, if they can't get that much golf in today and they have to come back out tomorrow when it's going to be 50 and raining and a north wind in there, it's a massive advantage for right now because this Brooks Koepka lead at 5 could be even more than that. It feels like more than that if the weather forecast comes true later on this afternoon.
Will, if weather like it's projected to plagues the Masters all weekend, you have to apologize for my ignorance here. What's the worst case scenario? Obviously, there's a great drainage system available at Augusta National, but what's the worst case scenario of how things play out here if rounds aren't able to begin in on their scheduled time and they're having to move and adjust things over the course of the weekend?
Yeah, Jimmy, today it's supposed to be storms, right? So if there's electricity, they're not going to play.
Right.
It's a dangerous situation, obviously, off the golf course. The weather forecast I saw for tomorrow is more that it's just kind of going to be a cold band of rain that just kind of parked over them and keeps coming. So if there's embedded thunderstorms, then they don't play. But as long as the rain is not coming down so heavy that it's puddling on the greens and it's an unplayable situation, they'll play through the rain. But if there is some electricity and this thing, pushes forward and pushes out and we don't, get, say, the third round done tomorrow. And that's a lot of things have to happen for that not to happen. This is a small cut. You only have the low 55 in ties. So you could play 36 holes in a day. And right now, Sunday looks clear. So if they were, worst case scenario, they're only able to get 36 holes done in some combination of today and tomorrow. If the storms pop up this afternoon, they could get lucky today. I still think they could play 2 rounds on Sunday around the golf course and get it done on time. But look, this is the first major of the year. It's the Masters. If they have to play on Monday, they can play on Monday. And I wish I had the note in front of me. I don't know when the last time there was a Monday finish at the Masters. I thought we were going to have one in 2019 when Tiger won. Remember, they went early that year to get out ahead of the storms and barely got done before it completely opened up on them. But I think you have to go back to the late 80s the last time we had a Masters that actually got pushed into Monday.
83, says Google.
Okay, there you go.
Yep.
How could Google be wrong? It can't be. Will Haskett from PGA Tour Radio joins us here on The Fan. It's funny, Will, correct me if I'm wrong, but we make such a huge deal out of weather with football, say the NFL, where if there's a pass-happy team and it's going to be rainy or really windy or there's snow. Like, it's a huge deal. It's talked about all week long leading up to a big game. This is the biggest tournament we have. And like you mentioned, it's a mammoth advantage if you have an earlier tee time today. Why don't you think we talk about it even more than we do the weather impact on a tournament like the Masters here?
Yeah, I mean, week in and week out, those of us that are covering it all the time talk about it all the time. I mean, the weather is the number one differentiator in scoring. I mean, you can, if it's the perfect meteorological conditions for a week leading up to the tournament, you can get golf courses that are firm and fast and super hard. But if it rains for 5 days, then you have greens that are dartboards. So, I mean, Mother Nature always has an impact. And they talked this year, the big story at Augusta was the lengthening of the 13th hole. They bought properties. They could move the tee farther back into the trees at 13. Yesterday, most of the guys were still going for that green. Why? Because there was no wind and it was 80-some-odd degrees with 100% humidity. So the ball just is a rocket in those types of conditions. Now, on the weekend, when the wind's going to switch from a different direction and it's going to be 35 degrees colder, the ball's not going to go anywhere. So the conditions have a huge impact on how the golf ball reacts off the club, how it travels. So these players are paying attention to it. But I think this week it was more just we knew the weather forecast was so bad. And so I think it's just how much golf are they going to get in? Is there going to be an advantage for guys in particular waves? And that may still prove to be true if there are storms that pop up this afternoon. But for a golf tournament like this that only had 88 guys that teed it up at the beginning of it, it's not like a typical week on the PGA Tour when you have 144 or 156-man fields and you're literally playing from sun up to sundown and you have significant advantages from the guys that are playing in the morning versus the afternoon. It's a little bit more of a steady off the first tee type of rhythm with this golf tournament. But yeah, this week I think it was just, with an inch or 2 inches of rain and really the temperatures and the wind tomorrow. I mean, it's just going to be a bad day to be on a golf course tomorrow. Like I would not want to play golf tomorrow, even if I was given a ticket to Augusta.
Will Haskett, nice enough to take some time with us. You can follow him on Twitter at Will Haskett. Will, guys not named Koepka and Rahm across the board at one DraftKings Sportsbook are plus 1,000 or better to win outright. So I'm basically asking you for names or value where you see things playing out. I only say that because Koepka and Rahm are both plus 165, plus 250. Everybody else, you get a pretty decent bang for your buck. If you were to, maybe you're not. Maybe you feel like, hey, there's no value, don't waste your time. But if you were to name somebody else not named Koepka and Rahm that you'd be comfortable hitching your wagon to here as the second round progresses, who would it be?
Yeah, and it's weird because I never think there's any value in any golfer that's, shorter than 10-1 most weeks, even when it goes into the weekends. And for some reason, I almost think Koepka has value with plus odds in front of him because of those weather conditions. Yeah. Jason Day has been playing winning level golf in 2023, and he's made an absolute mess coming in today. He was 9 under through 14 holes, jumped one in the water at 15, and then followed it up with a bogey at 16. So he's 606 shots back, but I still think has all of the combination of skills, and is another one of those guys that's about to post a number. I don't know where he's hit it on 18 right now. But if he can get in at -6 or maybe even squeeze a birdie at 18 and stay 5 or 6 back, again, this is a guy that's been on a short list a lot, so I think that there's some value in that one. And, further on down the line, there's just so many good guys that are in that pack. It's the question of who you're going to pick out of it, because the leaderboard right now to the top 15 is just stacked with incredible names. So whether it's Sam Burns, who won a couple of weeks ago at Match Play, Jordan Spieth just kind of had a ho-hum day today. He's just sort of lurking. But it's going to get so hard this weekend that par is going to be your friend. Creativity is going to be your friend. So if Koepka were to stumble, I kind of like a guy who can scrap it around. So that's why Rahm's probably near the top as a co-favorite. But maybe Jordan Spieth. I think the harder the golf course gets, the more it would probably play into Jordan Spieth's hands, because all of a sudden his short game becomes more of an advantage. Because right now it's just a scoreable golf course. So the very best players in the world, like a Rahm, like the way that Koepka is playing, have risen to the top because they can do anything they want to right now in this golf course.
You referenced Sam Bennett, the amateur, who, like you said, is still in school at Texas A&M. And you look at this leaderboard, he's right there, a stroke behind Jon Rahm, like Victor Hovland. He's at -6 right now for the tournament. How would you describe how difficult it is to do what he's doing right now?
Yeah, he's a really good player, and he probably he probably could have turned professional last year if he wanted to, and ended up sticking out for another year in College Station for a number of reasons. Number one being to take advantage of the fact that he won the U.S. Amateur and just to play in that tournament. And when he wins it, to maintain the advantages, and that is, getting into the tournament here this year, because that goes away if you turn professional. They typically rescind that invitation if you've given up your amateur status. But for a guy like Sam Bennett, he's just a gutsy, scrappy kid who's won at every level. There's a ton of great stories about his father, who had early onset dementia, and the influence that he has, the tattoo he has in his arm of the last words of wisdom that his dad gave him. I mean, there's a lot to really like about Sam Bennett. I spent some time with him down in Texas at an amateur event a few years ago. And I mean, just an absolute competitive spitfire of an athlete. Your back hurts if you watch him swing a golf club. Like it's like a 90-degree angle at impact down there. I don't know how long that's sustainable, but there's just something around this golf course. You have to be so precise. You have to have the game. You have to have the goods to be able to play well here. But you also have to have just a want to and a will to get the ball in the hole, to gut out a par when you're out of position. And look, the weekend's going to get here. It's going to get really, really hard. There's going to be more of a microscope on him. The odds say he's not going to be able to maintain this type of level. But I do appreciate the fact that of all the amateurs in the field, he wasn't the one we were talking about at the beginning of the week. Gordon Sargent, the 19-year-old from Vanderbilt, has unworldly length and incredible ball striking skills and is almost dead last. Like, he was the guy I was looking forward to watching this week, and instead it's Sam Bennett, who I think, maybe even a chip on his shoulder about it. Like, he is just an absolute gamer. Just if it was football, he's a slot receiver. If he's basketball, he's like a Braden Smith at Purdue. Just like a guy that goes out there and finds a way to scrap it around and get it done, but also probably doesn't get enough respect for how much game he really has. So I like the fact that he's getting this spotlight here this week, because he's a really good story, and he's going to be a good professional.
Will Haskett with us here on The Fan. Will, I know you talked to the morning show earlier this week, and while my in-depth knowledge might not be as precise in this realm as one Kevin Bowen, I am also a big Tiger Woods fan, so I got to ask the question while we're here. As you're looking at where he stands, tied for 50th right now, 2 pars to start the day, my expectation of, maybe there'll be some noise on Sunday has been whittled down to, let's make the cut. Think he makes the cut?
We got to root for no storms. We got to get this round in today. I think if they have to come back out tomorrow in cold conditions and it's a start-stop type of situation for him and trying to get the body revved up, I think it becomes a real problem for him. But this is going to be a tough afternoon sitting on the cut line for Tiger. I was disappointing yesterday because it looked like he just wasn't right at the beginning of the day. His warm-up looked a little bit stiff. He just didn't look as if everything came together. He needs a lot of good things to go his way. Like, some days are better than others with the body, and yesterday the body wasn't good, and it's a sign of his greatness that he's still on the cut line. I mean, he's beaten a number of high-quality players at the peak of their game right now, and he's doing it with smoke and mirrors, really, around a golf course that he knows better. So can he make the cut? Absolutely. He's Tiger Woods. So that's totally possible. We need to get this round in today, because I think in cold, wet conditions tomorrow, if, say, something pops up in the next hour and it pulls him off the golf course and he's got to play, another 9 holes tomorrow, I think that'd be really, really hard on him and the body to do that. So if you're rooting for a Tiger Woods made cut, root for the Storms to miss Augusta this afternoon.
Will, before you go, I was just curious if the Masters for you is like music for me, meaning if a Johnny-come-lately is like, oh, yeah, Metallica, Enter Sandman, and that's all they know, I'm like, get out of my face. You don't know anything right now. Is that how the Masters is for you when you get these Johnny-come-latelys? Like, act like they know what they're talking about, and you're like, you don't know anything about any of the non-major tournaments. Do you look at it like that at all?
Sometimes. I mean, that'd be a little bit too high and mighty of me to sort of say that. I joke with you guys. It's like, I'm doing 40 tournaments a year on PGA Tour Radio, and funny, this is the first time all year that I'm doing the car wash on 1070 The Fan to talk about golf. That's the reality of the business, right? I mean, it's a niche sport, and it's been good to me my entire life, but we recognize that this is a week where this is one of the preeminent sporting events in all of sport around the world. And so I get that. It'd be the same thing for me talking about, like, I know tennis when I'm only watching Wimbledon, the French Open, and the U.S. Open probably every year, and I'm skipping one of the majors. I don't even pay attention to the Australian Open, So it's a great week to introduce people to certain characters, and I hope that then they turn around and they want to watch them. I mean, the PGA Tour has adjusted its schedule now to try and bring the best players together as much as possible. And next week's another one of their new designated events, the RBC Heritage over in Hilton Head, which has always been a great event on the schedule. But now this year, every single top player is committed to playing it. So whatever happens this week, you're going to see those PGA Tour players all playing together next week. So maybe it kind of drives some attention going there. Now, granted, if Brooks Koepka goes on the win, he's not a PGA Tour player anymore. He's a live golfer. And that's a different conversation for a different day. Maybe on Monday when I'm sitting in there with Jimmy doing this show from noon to 3. We'll see what we're going to talk about coming up on Monday.
We'll see how it goes, man. Well, hey, Will, thanks for the time, man. Enjoy the rest of the tournament. We'll catch you soon.
Thanks, Will.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. There he is, Will Haskett, PGA Tour Radio. How about that? The comparison between Sam Bennett, amateur, Texas A&M, and scrappy Purdue guard Braden Smith. I like that. I hope that means Sam's not going to fade down the stretch, though.
I mean, that would be unfortunate if you are in his camp. It jumped from, I don't know what he was before, but now he's plus 6,000 odds. So I hope that's not unraveling with us as things stand. But yeah, I mean, look, when you look at where the day has started to where just the weather aspect of it, that's a great point you brought up earlier, is that we react to it in such a different way when it comes to golf for a lot of different reasons, but stylistically it is still impacted just as much as, to your example, a passing team is going to be impacted if there's torrential downpour, winds, or snow, whatever the case may be.
Well, and I also think, when he mentioned Sam Bennett and his style, he's like, your back hurts watching this guy tee off. I just find that interesting too. Does your style translate to old? Because you might have some success early in your career, but does it translate to old? Like Lamar Jackson doesn't have a style that translates to old. Albert Pujols, who I loved with the St. Louis Cardinals, when he went to the Angels, even when he was with the Cardinals, I knew just based on his batting stance, how you use so much lower body and just so much torque and power. I'm like, that's not going to translate to old, right? So I wonder, it's very early. Sam Bennett's 23 years old, but we don't talk about that in golf hardly at all.
Right.
If we talk about a quarterback that takes a lot of chances running like Lamar, we're going to talk about that. We rarely talk about a golfer like, man, dude, that style and that swing, whoo, you don't have a long shelf life with that thing right there. So I find that to stand out as well. Coming up next, was Eddie Garrison ripped off, or is he trying to game the system? And we have the result. The results are in. You heard back. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
7-5, The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. So, top of the hour, Kevin Bowen. We'll talk golf and beyond, Colts, hodgepodge. Think we can get cricket in? What's the most obscure sport we've talked about with KB?
I don't know how much knowledge you're going to get out of cricket with him.
Really?
I can't imagine there's more than... What's the sport called? I mean, that's me. That's my spot of it. I can't tell you much about cricket at all, my friend. I can't do it.
You know what's funny is, there's just so
There's
much
wickets.
stuff out there.
Wickets a cricket thing,
Wickets,
right? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. What else? Yeah, that's probably about it. I got nothing. Well, maybe KB can enlighten us. We'll find out. I'm
You
not
can
sure.
bet on darts.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You can bet on darts.
I wonder if he knows anything about that.
You know what's
KB swimming in
crazy?
the degenerate pool.
Have you seen, even if you don't watch it, just like the highlights? I've seen highlights of darts.
Yes.
And
It's insane.
It's insane. It is so hyped up.
It's like concert halls of
Yes.
just people absolutely losing their minds. They'll frequently pop up like every now and again when it's, I don't know what the calendar year is for it, but World Championship season around there, it'll pop in my TikTok feed, and I'm just enamored by it because you hear people losing their mind at every throw, because these aren't like just, your casual players. These are people where every shot, it's going to hit in the money. Just where's it going to go? Where's it going to land on the board? Yeah, it's electric.
Those guys are insane. Are they playing 501? And you just add up your points and count down?
I think.
It's either that or 701. I'm not sure. But these guys, they'll throw 3 darts, and it's literally each round is triple 20, triple 20, triple 20.
Yes.
And the whole crowd, they'll have signs for 180. That's 180 points. And they'll have this announcer guy, 180.
Yeah.
It's freaking awesome. I love it. I don't know how they are so consistent shooting darts like that. That's insane. Just insane.
It is the, like, darts, you wish that of your franchise quarterback, you could have that pinpoint accuracy on the field. Like, if you could have that type of translation, you'd be really going places with how accurate and just on a rope those darts are at that level.
Absolutely. Not everybody can be Will the Thrill Levis.
Exactly.
That's
Yes.
just the way it is.
Stop it.
How about this, Eddie? I don't know if you tried to work the system with betting on darts over there, but how about this story? So set it up for the people, Eddie, how you tried to work FD, if you will.
So last night I was working around the house. I was cleaning up. I was making some brownies. Get a text from a buddy. He goes, "Hurry, quick, go to FanDuel."
Hold up, were they weed brownies or just normal brownies?
Just normal brownies.
Okay, I was just making sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't even tell you if they were.
I'm just curious. That's all.
Totally legal.
Totally
chocolate
legal.
brownies.
Nothing shady. No shady
no
brownies.
shady business going on.
Okay, all right.
Anyway, so a friend texted me. He goes, "Hey, get to FanDuel quick. They have something out that's probably going to go away." So I rushed there. It was Jason Hayward to have a walk in his second plate appearance. He had just walked and they somehow left it open. I placed my money on it. I'm not going to say how much. And then I informed 2 friends of mine to go do it. They did it. I informed Jimmy to do it. He went and did it.
I never got a text. What's up with that, Eddie?
That wasn't a legit tip. I thought it was just something you were feeling good about. I had no idea.
And then let's see. So then we have to wait for the game to conclude. The bet settles about 1 o'clock in the morning, and it goes as a void. I'm like, well, crap. So then my friend is up FanDuel's rear end all day today trying to get an answer on why this was a void. So he's gone through like 5 or 6 different people. I've talked to one person. I've DM'd their FanDuel support team. I didn't get a reply to their support team. Then they come back and they finally give us an answer. And he's like, "Hey, sorry, since you knew the outcome of the result of this at bat or this plate appearance, we cannot pay out." And it was just so depressing.
At least you got the bet back, though, right? You got the bet back. It was voided. It was returned. Live to fight another day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
Good
depressing.
effort. Good effort.
How about that, though? Because the initial ruling was he didn't have a second plate appearance.
Yeah, they tried saying he didn't have a second at bat when he had a second plate appearance. And
okay.
There were some people within customer support. They're like, "Oh, he didn't have a second at bat, so that's why it doesn't count." Then we're like, "Well, a walk.
The language is plate appearance.
A walk is not an at bat; it's a plate appearance."
How about that? Eddie trying to work the system, betting on something that's already happened. Have you tried to get in on the Masters Day 1 today? Have you tried to bet that successfully?
I will be completely honest with you. I know very, very little to nothing about golf because I do not give a crap about it, if I'm being completely honest with you. So I have not wagered a penny on golf.
That's why we got to get you involved over here, Eddie. You're pretty sharp with the other sports. We got to throw you in the deep end.
I understand. I'm very sharp at NBA and MLB, and I'll stick to those lanes.
Okay. All right. Coming up next, our guy KB, Kevin Bowen. We're talking a wide array of things, including the Colts, maybe a little Pacers. We'll go in a lot of different directions. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. Here on The Fan, I want to welcome in Kevin Bowen. Kevin and Query. You hear him here on The Fan. Huge Tiger fan. And Eddie Garrison, that's the music choice he went with right there. You know, what do you think, KB? What do you think about Tiger so far in the Masters? Trying to cling on, make the cut here.
Yeah, we are in full grind mode. Yeah, make the cut is certainly where we're at, trying to extend the streak one more, 23 years in a row as a professional, which will tie a Masters record. So, I mean, yesterday, and I thought Tiger said it pretty accurately after the round, that was the gettable day. You know, he was in the morning wave yesterday. That's when a lot of guys went low, and he didn't hit it close to the hole, and short game is nowhere near what it used to be in terms of rock solid. And, you know, even early on today, just a little off with a bunch of pars here early. So he's hovering right around it, so we'll see if he can make the cut. And I say you make the cut and then you withdraw so you don't have to play tomorrow in 45-degree rainy weather.
Kev, when you examine, I guess that undercuts part of my next question, because we always like to be able to see a full Sunday across this great event with Tiger involved in it. Regardless of whether he withdraws or not, are you at a point where this is probably what it's going to look like for him across the board, even here at Augusta? Of course, he knows so well because of where his body is at.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, he really is going to have to catch lightning in a bottle from a Mother Nature standpoint. And again, I know that like might seem a little bit far-fetched to a lot of people, but I just think his body needs it to be as warm, and he needs the golf course to be as firm as possible to, you know, create a little bit more of a, you've got to think your way around it, and it's not just super wet, and it's how far you can fly it. I mean, we watched Tiger hit the golf ball. Now, I mean, he still hits it fine, but he's not flying it. You know, he hits this little weak slice pretty much everywhere. And I think any golfer knows that, you know, that's typically a sign of someone that can't create the same type of swing speed, and just it's much more of a think your way around the golf course. And that's hard to do when the golf course is 7,500 yards, which Augusta National is, and as wet as it is. So, it's a lot of wishful thinking at this point for everything to match up. You know, certainly from a walking standpoint, this golf course is not the easiest to walk either. So that would not help him as, you know, 72 holes move along. But stringing together 4 rounds just seems like a long, long ways away for Eldrick.
How about the top of the leaderboard here, KB, where Brooks Koepka, he leads all golfers. He's at -12, done for the day. Sam Bennett, the amateur, he's in second place now. He's at -8. Which do you think is the better story? Brooks Koepka coming back from the kneecap injury from about 2 years ago, now he's leading, or Sam Bennett, who's an amateur, who's done something in the first round, no bogeys at the Master, that hasn't been done in the last 30 years? Koepka or Team Bennett for you, KB?
Yeah, I mean, the Koepka story is, you know, deserves credit, but, yeah, nothing compares to what Sam Bennett is doing right now. I mean, he's approaching something that's never been done in Masters history in terms of being the low amateur. I think if he gets to 9 under, maybe that would be the lowest ever for an amateur through 36 holes. And, you know, we're talking about a tournament that has gone on for quite some time. I don't know how familiar people are with Sam Bennett. Yeah, I remember watching the USAM last summer, and they really focused on the story there of his father passing just a couple of years ago. He's got a tattoo on his arm about it. And this is a guy that plays a little bit of fire. I don't know if we've seen it fully just yet, but plays a little bit of fire, a little bit of swagger. And I mean, it's darn impressive what he's doing. Also, he's playing with the defending champ and is absolutely, you know, waxing Scotty Scheffler right now, which that only kind of adds to it. But at the same time, I mean, and again, I've been pretty vocal about my displeasure with Live Golf. I mean, Brooks Koepka, that's a hell of an effort through 36 holes. I mean, it just looks pretty easy for Koepka. It looks a little Tiger in his prime. You know, when you look at today's round, he shot 5 under and literally played the par 5s and 5 under. So those 4 holes, 3 birdies and an eagle, he even par the rest of the round, just smart, solid, you know, middle of the greens on par 5s, rolling an eagle putt on 8. Really clinical by Brooks. And I thought after the round, I don't know if you guys caught it, you probably didn't because you've, you know, obviously been on air, but I mean, he pretty much said a big reason why he went to Live at the time he did was because he was hurt. And you brought it up, Brian, but I mean, he was hurt pretty seriously and was playing pretty bad golf. And when you combine that, I thought he looked at himself and thought, boy, I don't know how much longer or if I'm going to get back to the level that I was once at. So why not go get that guaranteed money and, you know, take that as the absolute definite. So, boy, hell of a 36 holes for him. I like the leaderboard underneath him. I like a lot of guys, but right now, way too big of a gap for my entertainment viewing.
Kevin Bowen at Kevin and Query with us. You can follow him on Twitter at KBowen1070. Kev, any futures bets in terms of outright winners here at Augusta to this point? Will you play anything this weekend? Is there anything that's caught your eye right now?
So at the start of the week, I put a little scratch on 2 winners, and that was Victor Hovland and that was Jason Day. About an hour ago, maybe 90 minutes ago, I felt pretty good about that, and then Jason Day imploded on the final 4 holes. I think he had it to 9 under, if I'm not mistaken. I think at one point he was 2 back of Koepka, and then he played the last 4 in 4 over. Hovland right now is at 7, so he's 5 back of Koepka. I think he's in 3rd. Depending on how the weather goes the rest of the day, I mean, Hovland you would think has a chance, but right now, I mean, boy, I guess you got to throw a little bit on, some of these guys, 5 and 6 back, and hope that the weather cooperates the rest of the day if they're still on the golf course, because again, Brooks Koepka has taken full advantage of a really nice draw, and clearly has done it like nobody else that we're teeing off in the same sort of time slots as him. But boy, he's got to love kind of kicking up the feet this afternoon, seeing if the wind picks up. Right now I just pray that Day or Hovland get in the mix. And really at this point, just give me drama this weekend.
I'm with you, and the whole PGA Tour versus Live Golf Tour, that's drama right there. And what's fascinating to me, KB, is that these live events, they don't count toward qualification. So some of these guys that defected in the past year, they're running out of chances to qualify as time goes on. I think that's bad for golf overall. The PGA Tour might like it where it's like, oh, this live guy isn't going to be there. Well, what a shame. But imagine if we didn't have Brooks Koepka leading right now. That's a storyline. That's drama. I want all the drama I can get.
Yeah, and I think, adding to the drama would be if, and hopefully we'll get that this weekend. Maybe it's a John Rahm making a run today where you get kind of a PGA Tour stalwart to go head-to-head against Brooks. I mean, that's the type of storylines you would love to see. Brooks' case, he's obviously won enough majors that he's still going to be playing in the Masters. But you do have a lot of guys that are, kind of on the fringe of that based off the world ranking last year, based off finishing top 12 at the Masters last year, that's why they are in the field. And that obviously won't be a given, year in and year out. And really, I mean, a guy that it pains me to say this because I'm a Tiger guy and I don't like at all how he's handled things in the past couple of years, but you got to give credit where credit's due. I did not have Phil Mickelson at 4 under par through 36 holes. He has played terrible over on Live as well. And, some of it I think helps these guys. Again, this is a golf course that they know a lot and you'll certainly have ample history here. So that aspect of it is pretty familiar to them. But for Mickelson and Koepka's case, hell of an effort here heading into the weekend.
KB, want to switch to Mock Draft Central as we continue to get closer and closer inside of 3 weeks now until draft night. We've obviously had the quarterback conversation back and forth, and I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit over the course of our chat with you here as well. But want to look bigger picture outside of the first round. When you look at obvious needs for this team, I tend to be more of an offensive first guy, regardless of maybe the needs present on defense. I'd love to see shiny new toys, shiny new playmakers, particularly at the wide receiver position. When you look at rounds 2 and 3 and needs for this team, will they aggressively tack wide receiver first, or do you think it's more cornerback / additional help on defense after you get outside of round 1?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, knowing Chris Ballard, I wouldn't hold my breath on a lot of heavy offensive selections, really. And if you looked at it purely from like a depth chart standpoint, and didn't think about, hey, I have a rookie quarterback. How do we best support that rookie quarterback early on? Which, again, I think needs to be the first priority with any roster acquisition move that you make. I mean, corner is a massive need. Stephon Gilmore played over 1,000 snaps for you last year. I mean, right now your starting corners would be Isaiah Rodgers, Dallas Flowers, and then Kenny Moore in a contract year. So even the short term, especially the long term, you've got some big questions at that position. And it does sound like it's a pretty deep cornerback draft, so maybe that would be a route that you would pursue. But I tend to side with you. I'd like to see a pass catcher being taken, if not round 2, definitely in round 3. I get that you have some young guys on your roster that you like, but when you look at the offensive moves here this offseason, it's kind of interesting how it's unfolded in that the Colts were good on defense last year. And they've lost 4 of their top 8 guys on that side of the ball. They were bad on offense, and yet you look at what they've done on offense this year. They've lost, a guy that was a nice contributor for them in Paris Campbell, and his replacement to me is more of a kind of a gadget guy in Isaiah McKenzie. So, from a personnel standpoint, it's pretty interesting that they just haven't really touched the offense at all after a year that they were historically poor with that unit. So, in some order, I would say it's corner, it's pass catcher, and it's offensive line that I think you need to. Those three, to me, outside of quarterback, kind of stand above the rest on the needs list.
Just had a random thought, KB. We've talked so much draft stuff that I'm just worried I'm going to ask you the same question again. You know what I mean? I feel like you're a nice dude. You would just answer it and maybe think to yourself, like, this idiot already asked me this, but I would never know it. Is that how you would handle it?
I don't think I'd be like, yeah, Brian, wow, you asked me that last week and you asked me that back in mid-March, because I'm sure as hell that I have asked, very similar questions, if not the same question. And honestly, part of that is just it's kind of the nature of the season. Like, April for a team drafting high in the draft, it gets a tad redundant. Are we having the same conversations over and over again? And you guys know this full well. I mean, this is peak lying season. Peak lying season. Like, everything I hear, see, read, my first thought is skepticism. And I'm not usually like that type of person. I'm not this like, whatever, king conspiracy theorist or I'm like, But when it comes to draft talk, especially between now and, 2 weeks from Thursday, everything is like that for me.
Kevin, when you look at where your stance has changed on this quarterback class over the last couple of weeks, and as you've talked to more scouts and just talked with anybody on the show or just on your beat, 1075thefan.com, what's been the biggest thing that's changed or moved the needle for you with any of these quarterbacks, even if it's someone that likely won't end up with the Colts like Stroud or Young, assuming that it kind of goes chalk in 1-2 come April 27th?
Yeah,
or 21st.
It's a good way to put it. I continue to think, Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud are on a tier by themselves. And, I probably felt that way, but I just think it's a little bit more reassurance on that. Probably a little bit more open-minded to Anthony Richardson. I feel like in a weird way, I've always thought just this recent, aggressive criticism towards Will Levis is a tad overblown with that. And, the question that I threw to Jake earlier today, and I guess I'll toss your guys' way, is how I look at it is if you've got two similar quarterbacks, and let's just play out the hypothetical that it's Levis and Richardson here, to me the question becomes, what do those guys lack? And what they lack, how teachable is that? How much can you correct it? How much can you develop the trait that they do not have that is the reason why they're not on the tier of Bryce Young or C.J. Stroud? So in Richardson's case, it's accuracy. And in Levis's case, it's probably some footwork and some processing. Mm-hmm. And so now you have to look at it and say, all right, is Richardson's accuracy due to a lack of game reps? Is it something from a fundamental standpoint? Can you correct that? And with Levis's case, is it because he had offensive coordinator turnover and the lack of personnel around him was not maybe the most ideal environment this past season at Kentucky? So those are the things you have to, I think, ask yourself and say, can we develop that? Because, I don't think we're in a situation with any of these four guys where we're really questioning them too much, from a character standpoint. By all accounts, all of them kind of check that box. This isn't like maybe a Kyler Murray situation or a Baker Mayfield situation when those guys came out. I think you feel pretty confident about that. So now it becomes, what do they lack and how confident do you feel that you can teach that?
That's a good way to look at it, KB. I like that. By the way, before you go, your partner, Jake Query, I would like you to do something for me, okay? So this goes back earlier in the week. He was mentioning me and Dane Fife, a show we did, and we interviewed Trace Jackson Davis. Is this a short snippet of what he said the other day?
Trace Jackson Davis did join the midday show here on The Fan with Dane Fife and Brian Noy.
Okay, so Noy right there, right? It's no. So if you could, your finishing move of choice, put him in the Stone Cold Stunner, maybe you go Undertaker, Tombstone, Pile Driver, whatever you would like to do. But if he throws out a Brian Noy again, can you do that for me, KB?
This rocked him to his core, Kevin. He needs some retribution.
Ryan, usually when about 10 a.m. hits on Friday, I'm probably ready to go Undertaker with Jake anyways. So I don't even know if I needed to have any encouragement from you. But given that, I will certainly do that. As a diehard Notre Dame basketball fan, I am a big follower of Tom Noy. So I must admit, when I first heard that from Jake, I thought, is he referencing Tom Noy? But I will make sure on Monday to let him know that N-O-E. Any relation to Mark No, by the way? He was a teacher that I had in high school.
No, I don't believe so. I'll double check that. I don't think so. I would anticipate Mark is a great man, though.
Yes, he is. He's a great cat, hell of a tennis coach. So yeah, I will make sure that that does not happen again. And if it does, it's not going to end well for Jake and the Undertaker.
Perfect. Thank you, KB. I knew I could count on you, man. Enjoy the weekend, and thanks for the time today, man.
Boys, always enjoy it. Happy Friday.
Thanks, Kevin.
Same to you. There he is. Kevin Bowen. Kevin and Query. By the way, I like how KB says amateur. Do you do that? Amateur? I say amateur, but it's more distinguished the way KB does it.
I think I lead more amateur. This is the third time this week you propose one of these to me, and when I think about it, I feel like I interchange. I'm not a hard stance guy one way or the other, but probably more often than not, I say amateur.
Yeah, talking about Sam Bennett, who's in second place of the Masters right now.
Ooh, I got another one.
What do you have?
Tournament or tournament?
Tournament all day.
Tournament.
Yeah. Tournament.
I will say, though, amateur, to your example, plays the stage of golf far better.
Doesn't it?
Yes.
Especially with the Masters music in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you just said amateur,
Sam
Bennett.
Bennett having a great outing so far.
I like that KB, he talked about the Colts defense was good last season, which it freaking was.
It was.
And I go back to this Yahoo Sports column that we were talking about.
Disappointing.
They're just ranking the divisions, which are the most competitive divisions, which are the least competitive divisions. And within this write-up, it said the AFC South was one of the least competitive divisions. The writer expects the Jaguars to repeat. Okay, whatever. But at the end of this, Jimmy, it says the Houston Texans and Indianapolis Colts, meanwhile, both have bad defenses and will start either a rookie or mediocre quarterback under center. The Colts do not have a bad defense. To KB's point, they're missing some talent going into this season compared to last season. But to say that they've got a bad defense, even with the losses, it's not a bad defense.
Yeah, like we talked about earlier, for me, this is, you're trying to make your point. You're trying to emphasize how easy the South is going to be. And perhaps there was not enough digging, there was not enough digging done in the realm of the Colts analysis for these one or two sentences you're giving. I agree with the concept that I think the Jaguars are a runaway right now. Like with today, that's who I would back. Had no problem doing it in terms of favorites across all divisions in football. But the idea that you're going to take the Colts down a peg with something that is not accurate, it frustrates me for an otherwise relatively interesting thought piece.
No, that's true. And also, he did mention Phil Mickelson, lefty, at -4 right now. He's tied for 11th. And that's a lot higher than many people thought where he would be right now. The thing with Lefty is I hate the neutered version of himself. You know what I mean? It's like if Phil Mickelson, if he started off as a sports car, he was a Ferrari. Like he was Lefty. He's bigger than life, gregarious, fun. And now he's like a cheap used car. Like you don't even see him on the broadcast and you don't hear from him. It's just weird how it's gone from bigger than life, fun, to this neutered version of himself. It's strange.
And even, it's so much deeper than just Liv, because I feel like if you rewind the tapes and you're putting Liv's arrival in like 2012 or so, let's just go like a decade plus since right now, I think Phil is still being open and just aggressive about his entire decision to go there, and he's not shying away from press conferences, and he has good quips and good one-liners to throw back at the media court available there for press conferences. And now that's the bigger thing for me, is like, even though I wasn't always like diehard Phil, when the Phil Tiger happened, I was more Tiger. I miss the idea of a good soundbite or a good nugget from him versus now where, like you said, you have to really work hard to figure out where he is in the state of play for the Masters this weekend.
Right. And look, I get in terms of the coverage where this is a PGA Tour event, right, with the Masters and basically, right? And I understand why they're not going to shove a microphone in front of his face at every turn.
Yeah.
You know, I get that. But it's not just about the lack of coverage. It's that during the Champions Dinner, Phil was there, and according to Fuzzy Zeller, he's like, yeah, he sat at the end of the table. He didn't talk to anybody. He didn't say anything. It's like, that's not Phil at all. No. It's weird. So it's not just the lack of coverage. It's that he's behaving so differently now. It's strange. I don't like it.
No, I'm with you. I wish that there was something we could do about it. Regrettably, we have to roll and hope that there's more drama created by somebody else. Brooks Koepka is plenty capable of doing that, and he's backing it up with his play right now. If you listen to the Fan at all, or you followed Kevin Bowen across his tenure covering sports, you know how big a Tiger Woods fan he is. So to drop in a Tiger Woods-esque comparison in terms of the second round that Koepka put together, very, very high praise, and deservedly so when you put a 5-under second round, now 12-under, and the leader of this great event.
Yes, very high praise. Short game, not worthy of high praise yesterday for Tiger. No. Was he 1 out of 12 in terms of his short game? It's bad. Not
a little heat
putting.
Late. He had 2 straight birdies before he went off the air, but then he closed with the bogey, and it's been, as Kevin mentioned, pretty much par. Though a really nice approach shot you just had a couple moments ago. So.
Very nice. That's big for the cut right there, as he should be able to put that one on home. I think it'd be for birdie.
Selfishly, I'll be disappointed, though, if he does what Kevin suggested, and I get it, and it would be well within his right, and I'll still watch, and I won't be mad, and maybe it's the risk reward of if his body's really not there, and the colder it is, the harder it's going to be on him and his ailments. I would easily see withdrawal, but to your point about Phil not being Phil, and I know Tiger isn't Tiger, that would not feel Tiger for me.
That would
if he makes the cut and then waves the hat and that's the end.
Man, I would much rather he didn't make the cut
me too.
than make it and have to bow out.
Me too.
That's just not Tiger, no doubt. That's like, the late Kobe Bryant. We always think about him shooting the free throw with the torn Achilles.
Yeah.
That's Kobe. Like, Tiger is a guy who just guts it out.
Yep.
So, I hope it doesn't come to that. By the way, real fast before we turn the page here, Eddie Garrison made it very clear that he pretty much hates all things golf. And so I'm just curious, honest question. We've talked a decent amount of golf today. How has it been, Eddie? I want you to be brutally honest. Are you just like falling asleep on the board? Or, has it been okay? Slightly enjoyable?
It's not that I don't hate golf. It's just that I don't understand how people enjoy just sitting there watching guys hit golf balls. It's like, it is the most boring thing ever. It's like watching paint dry or watching your grass
But that's not the
grow.
question. Okay, you hate watching golf, but how about the conversation we've had about golf?
Have you dozed off at all on the golf
Oh,
content?
certainly. I have dozed off, but at the same time, I listen because I still need to be up to date on what's going on.
Okay, fair enough. In between cat naps, you've heard every ninth word or something like that.
He's informed. He's just not happy about it. That's where we're at.
He's informed, but he doesn't like it.
My words off air to Jimmy yesterday are much more stronger than what I'm saying right now.
Okay, all right. Coming up next, non-golf talk. That's right up your alley here, Woo-hoo. Eddie Garrison. There's a new mock draft. And it has a lot to do with the Indianapolis Colts. We will rank how likely it is to happen on a scale from 1 to 10. Highly scientific. That's on the way. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. You know, I know we promised Colts talk, and we'll get to it in just a minute here, but at the risk of Eddie Garrison falling asleep here, I can't get over Sam Bennett, where he's on 17 right now, Jimmy, and for his day, he's got 1 bogey, 5 birdies, in sole possession of second place right now as an amateur at the Masters. Like that, I think that is the story of the tournament so far. Brooks Koepka and his jacked up knee from 2 years ago, that's a huge story as well, don't get me wrong, but an amateur doing this, I don't know. I just think that's, I don't know the best way to say it, like the common man storyline where it's like, oh, dude, like you almost put yourself in the shoes of Sam Bennett more than you would Brooks Koepka, whether that's fair or silly or not. I think you can relate to Sam Bennett a little bit more. If you're like amateur status of whatever occupation you do, you know, you might pull for Sam Bennett a little more there.
We were joking a little bit during the break about potential jinxes that could, you know, definitely have an impact on real world golfers based on what we're betting. So enjoy this story while you can, because I put $2 just now on Sam Bennett at plus 5,000 to win the whole thing.
Ooh, so I should go bet.
So you should go bet anybody else. Basically, is what I'm telling. Go find your
Koepka?
dance partner. Yeah, Koepka's fine. Go ahead, go do that.
I'm surprised it'd be 50-1.
So
when he's in second place.
I'm paraphrasing a bit. This was placed at 2:04, so about 26 minutes ago. I'm misleading the audience slightly, but I did do it during our conversation for with KB.
He was close.
Yeah.
He was close to where he currently is.
Yep.
I'm surprised the odds are that long. I get it. He's an amateur, and I get it. I get it. But 50-1 when you're at the time you place that around second place, those odds seem longer than the possibility that he actually wins it.
I would agree.
Right?
And to this point, it's plus 3,500 now. So, I mean, and live lines with golf are very strange because, Tiger.
I missed it.
Birdie putt missed by Ty. That's disappointing.
It's the worst, man. You do all this work, and you have a makeable putt. You miss it by an inch to the right.
Tiger! Got to get one of those out there.
So I know Kevin.
Go ahead, Eddie. Wait.
I know Kevin's watching this, and when he's doing this is what I imagine him saying right now.
No, God!
Well done.
No, God, please, no!
That's just imagine when I see KB.
That's what I'm
for
thinking.
the record, like when you talk about golf, I am all for this storyline. But if there were more storylines like this regularly, maybe I would watch golf. But to me, it just doesn't happen often.
To clarify, I will watch and throw on a Valero Open. I know it was a couple weekends ago, but I'll throw on a tournament if it's like a Saturday or Sunday, middle of summer, because, hey, you just want something on in the background and I can follow some of these golfers.
It's called baseball.
I'll do the same with baseball as well, but I felt slightly stabbed at by one Brian Noe when he brought up Will Haskett, because to some extent I am a Johnny-come-lately by his definition, because I love the majors, but I'm not to Eddie's point, I'm not as enthralled as the diehard golf fan who's watching
here's
all
the
the
thing.
tour events.
Here's the first thing. I didn't even know that was true. That was no veiled shot at you. Like
I knew it was.
Yeah.
To be clear, I'm not trying to paint it like you, but I felt
very direct. I'm very direct.
Yes, you are.
I would come at you guns blazing.
I know you would.
if anything, it's really me also. I'm not a huge golf guy at all. I love the Masters. I watch the majors. I don't watch the non-majors. And so basically, I'm everything that I absolutely despise about certain people related to music. If you're like, oh, hey, man, Metallica, Enter Sandman. I'm like, name another song. And they're like drawing a blank. I want to put them in the Steiner recliner. I want to give them a Stone Cold Stunner. It drives me freaking crazy. But that's how I am with golf. I'm like, oh, hey, the Masters. Oh, yeah, what happened at the Valero Open? I didn't even know it was an Open, right? I'm everything I hate.
And there's, I need stakes and I need hype. And here's how I guess I'm not going to remember which hole it is and to not call myself on it, I should. But the Waste Management Open, I can't. It's blanking on me.
16.
I think it is 16, but but again, people go nuts. It's a whole gallery.
It's awesome.
A couple last year even. You had just beers flying everywhere because they got a hole in one on 16. Like if there's a niche, or if there's just an avenue that I can attach myself to, I'm all about a casual tournament in February or a tournament in mid-June or July. But yeah, I'm not the everyman that's going to sit down and try to sell to Eddie, hey, you're going to get enjoyment out of random tournament in June. But if you can't get involved or intrigued at all, by Augusta, it's not for you. It's not for you.
It does remind me a bit of the Final Four that we just had.
Yeah.
Where the stakes are as high as they're going to be. This is for a championship. These are the Final Four teams. If Florida Atlantic and San Diego State don't do it for you, okay, I mean, I get it, but the stakes on the line, the prestige, I love basketball to begin with. I'm absolutely going to be watching. I don't understand these people that don't.
Yeah.
But, hey, man, sometimes the Masters, that's not even enough for a non-golf fan. Let's get to the Colts here as promised, because Nick Baumgardner of The Athletic, he put out a new mock draft, and he did the top 3 rounds, so rounds 1 through 3. So we'll look at who he's got the Colts getting, but I want to focus on the top 5 here, Eddie. And Jimmy.
First time you've done that in a while.
What it is.
Yeah. At least he caught it.
I did catch it. I'm making a little bit of progress over here. So Nick has the Lions making a trade with the Arizona Cardinals. So the Lions jump up from number 6 to number 3, and they draft Will Anderson Jr. out of Alabama. And then he's got the Colts taking Anthony Richardson at number 4. Now, whether you're Team Richardson or Team Levis, what have you, put that to the side just for a second. The Colts not moving up and still having their pick between Richardson and Will Levis is something that I would absolutely like to see. The chances of this happening, I mean, Will Anderson Jr. might be a stud in the NFL, but do you see the Lions? This is what the Colts did a few years ago with the Jets, right? The Jets move up from 6 to 3 to get Sam Darnold. And the Colts moved down, and they got Quentin Nelson and others, Braden Smith, involved in that deal. So to move up from 6 to 3, yeah, trades happen, but to move into the top 5 for a non-quarterback, I don't know. And you're leapfrogging a team like the Colts that needs a quarterback. I don't think we're going to see that. I would put the likely on this, the probability of this happening, scale from 1 to 10. I'll give it a 2. I just don't see the Lions pole vaulting above the Colts there.
I'm going to give it a 4, which isn't much better. But the reason I could potentially see it happening is if you are Detroit and you, misguidedly, by the way, if you believe that Jared Goff is your answer at quarterback, you don't need to try to trade up for one of these quarterbacks. You're good. You're fine. You're standing pat. Or, hey, maybe it's, we don't really value Richardson or Levis. We think Goff's better. We're fine. Okay. So what's your next thought? Well, they could use some more weapons on the defensive side of the ball. Seattle could also use some help on the defensive end. They're a pick above you as it stands, 6 to 5. You make a trade up with Arizona to guarantee you get your guy. Bada bing, bada boom, there's the selection. I could see that playing out if that is where Detroit's most pressing need is in their war room, is to get the defender of their choosing.
You know what I love so much about the draft, with you just saying that comment there, Jimmy, is that it sounds right now on April 7th, it will to a lot of people sound utterly preposterous that it's even possible that Jared Goff could be better than either Anthony Richardson or Will Levis, right? Like, it could easily be the case.
Yes, it's not a big ledge to go off of to say that Jared Goff, who, despite his flaws, has made a successful, at least in terms of handling starting jobs, and even though he got traded from L.A. because of his flaws, he has been able to find himself a new home in Detroit. Not a big realm to say that, hey, a proven starter in the league, even though towards the bottom half, will have a longer career than these wild card prospects that we just don't know how they're going to translate just yet.
Yeah, it's look, I'm not telling you Jared Goff is awesome, but his passer rating for his career, we're talking 7 seasons here, is 92.8. That's decent. It's not bad.
Serviceable.
And just a couple of stats to throw out. We know all of this isn't based on stats, but like playing for the Lions the last couple of years, mixed with 5 years with the Rams, touchdowns to interceptions, 155 to 70. Like, seriously, think about this. Over the next 7 years, let's say Anthony Richardson and Will Levis are starting. for over the next 7 years, which we don't even know that. Do you think that their numbers are going to be better than 155 touchdowns, 7 interceptions? They could. Don't get me wrong. The point is, it could go either way. But we tend to look at it where, because it's the bright new shiny thing, and because we haven't seen any failure whatsoever in the NFL, because they're not there yet, our imaginations run wild, where it's like, oh my gosh, you get Anthony Richardson, the sky's the limit. He could easily be worse than Jared Goff. Easily.
And regardless of who they take, and that's why I agree with you through this larger process, is that regardless of who they take, even if you're lined up to make the number 1 overall pick, it, for the most part, tried and true, takes time for quarterbacks to reach their full potential in the NFL. The older example and the example around town is always Peyton Manning, the early struggles that he had. They supplied us more weapons. He got more confident as an NFL quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is that embodiment right now, right? I'm not saying he's going to have a career like Peyton Manning, but he's back on a path where maybe he is going to be as good as he was projected to be out of college because of the bounce back year he had in year number 2. You can't just wash everything away off of just their rookie campaign. It does become harder, though, as a fan, to bottle in that anticipation if he's sitting for a whole year, which very well could happen here in Indianapolis.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see how it shakes out. Also, this mock draft from Nick Baumgartner, he's got the Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker going 81st overall to the Lions is what he has. Okay, like, what do you think the chances are of that? Let's just take the pick itself. Number 81, right? Like, it's interesting to think about that because you're starting to hear a little bit more buzz about Hendon Hooker maybe going in the first round, if not maybe the second round, but pick 81. It makes me wonder, last year we saw this. We saw this with Desmond Ridder and Malik Willis and these guys that went in the third round much lower than a lot of people expected. Could that happen with Hendon Hooker? Yeah, it could. It doesn't seem like it right now, but I wouldn't be as shocked come draft day as I initially was when I first saw this mock draft.
We're having to wade through. You've warned us. Thor has warned us. The God of Thunder has warned us that if we have that warning, then we got to keep moving where we are. Kevin has warned us. It is lying season. Sure. It is manipulation season. I might not be like jaw to the floor, but I would be relatively surprised if one team couldn't look at the skill level of Hendon Hooker, despite the fact he's coming off of injury, and not want to take a swing at him in the second round. I would be a little bit surprised if middle to late third he's still on the board. That would shock me a little bit. I won't lie.
We'll see, man. I would be surprised. I wouldn't be shocked. How about the Colts selections? So we're looking at this first 3 rounds. Take it for what it is. So Nick Baumgartner of The Athletic, he's got Anthony Richardson going number 4 overall to the Colts. Number 35 pick, he's got cornerback from Mississippi State, Emmanuel Forbes, which you might be hearing his name for the first time right now. But if that indeed is the pick, oh my gosh, I hear this guy has great closing speed, and look at him in bump and run coverage, and I love this freaking guy, right? Like, it's not a Colts thing, it's just an NFL thing. Every fan base tends to do that.
It's a need. You see a need addressed, and you're like, yes, that's what we know, even though I really only knew about you 4 minutes ago, but yes, our need is addressed. This
is just like Darius Slay, big play Slay, went to the same college. He's going to be as good as the Eagles quarterback. I know it. I know this. Yeah, but if he goes to the Titans, this guy stinks. He's not going to do anything. And then also number 79, via Washington, Tank Dell, wide receiver from Houston. So that's it, according to the 3-round mock. Just keep those names in mind. Don't know if it will ever happen, but if it does, Tank Dell will not be it'll be the second time you've heard that name, possibly, on draft day if you're listening right now.
If you're a Colts fan, and you have your preferences, just like we all do. For example, as we've stressed, I'm Team Richardson. Brian is Team Will, the thrill. Levis. So you got to have that in there too. But as long as the needs are addressed, every fan base, I'm not saying the Colts are going to do the same thing. We can't believe he was still there. We're so happy that we got our guy. We hear it every year from every team, not just the Colts. But as long as the needs are being addressed, yes, any fan base is going to be able to talk themselves into it, whether it plays quarterback, cornerback, wide receiver, or QB, wide receiver, cornerback, as long as I see those addressed in some capacity and I can get behind what we've seen on tape from said prospect, I'm not going to be angry come day after the draft.
Hey, coming up next, there's a scenario I just thought of. If it plays out like this, would there be more or less pressure on the Colts quarterback? And we'll get you some gambling selections coming up as well. I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
7-5, The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe. He's Jimmy Cook here on The Fan. You know, I was thinking about this scenario here, JCook. What would put more pressure on the Colts quarterback? Okay, assuming they take a quarterback in the first round. Would it be scenario 1? The Colts stay at number 4 and they get the 4th of 4 quarterbacks. Okay? Right? Like quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, 4. Could happen. Would that put more pressure on the Colts quarterback, or would it be where quarterbacks go 1, 2, there's a defensive player or a non-quarterback chosen 3, and the Colts have their choice between Richardson and Levis, most likely, and they take one of those 2 guys? Which would put more pressure on the Colts quarterback?
To me, it's the latter. You look at, and I know this is different than the scenario you played out, but bear with me for a second. The fact that the Bears made a trade-up acquisition to go get Mitchell Trubisky, combined with the fact that Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes were quarterbacks that followed him after his selection, he is forever tied with that trio of QBs throughout the entirety of his time in the NFL. And obviously, it's less prevalent now that he's a backup and isn't a starting quarterback, but it's still something that's going to be referenced. And if he ever gets another bite at the apple, that's going to be the storyline that follows him. Oh, here's the guy that was picked before Mahomes and Watson. To me, and again, you have to debate within yourself the type of mental fortitude the prospect has. How much will it really impact them? But if we're saying it is going to impact them one way or the other, it is being chosen over another prospect where the Colts could have a choice of, for the sake of argument, Richardson or Levis. I stressed this to you yesterday. If I'm Will Levis, it's going to be very hard if Richardson is shining and developing into this great toy and the Colts could have had him, and instead they chose Levis and he doesn't do the same. For me, it would put immense pressure on me to try to get to that level or prove the Colts were right in taking me.
Well, listen, I think you got it right. In those 2 scenarios, I think that having your choice between 2 quarterbacks at, let's say, 3 or 4, whether you move up at 3 or you stay put at 4, if you have your choice between Levis, Richardson, and you make your choice, yeah, that's going to put a lot of pressure on the Colts QB because there's going to be an even bigger microscope or a bigger magnifying glass to compare those 2 QBs. But I also think the first scenario, if you stay at 4 and it's the 4th quarterback of 4 taken, that puts a lot of pressure on the guy too, because the questions of why didn't you move up? Why didn't you move up to 3? If you think that's the guy, you should move up. And that still would put a lot of pressure on the Colts quarterback. So I find that to be interesting. The other part is, look, man, if it's Levis, either way, if it's Levis at 3, they move up. If it's Levis at 4, they get him there. It's funny because, man, a lot of these people that are anti-Levis right now, they would have amnesia. And also, if Levis goes somewhere else and plays well, these Colts fans will have amnesia of like, I said they should have drafted Levis.
Yeah.
You can hardly find people that say, I thought Ryan Leaf was the guy over Peyton Manning. Good luck. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, but it would be like that with Levis if he pans out.
Yeah, here's the thing, and this is why I stress caution, right? I think that, again, just my take on it, they will regret if they take Levis over Richardson. Just my personal opinion. However, if you're anti-Levis right now, you're not instantly right if, let's say, he starts under center week 1 and he plays poorly. It's this whole grace period, time for development aspect that we've talked about. Like, you're going to have it on Twitter because that's the society we live in. I was right. See, I tried to tell you, look at week 1, Brian. No, you can't have that argument because you need a fair progression, just like when you're gauging a recruiting class in college athletics. You need a fair amount of progression and a fair timeline to really know what he is, unless, if it's week after week after week, it's clear that this isn't for him.
Well, I think Kevin Bowen made a great point in between telling me that he would give Jake Query a stone cold stunner if he says Brian Noy again. Outside of that, he made a great point where he was talking about
Brian Noy.
Yeah, he was talking about what would it take for, say, Levis or Richardson to get on the level of C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, as many perceive it. And one of the major things for Will Levis would be upgrading the talent around him. That's not going to happen immediately if he goes to a team picking in the top 5. So, yeah, you got to have some patience there. It's not just a talent thing. Sure, some processing, feeling the blitz, all that type of stuff. You got to do some things on his end, but a lot of his struggles are tied to the lack of talent around him. Now we smoothly transition to your picks here, JCook. Let's dive right on in here.
The JCook Plays of the Day.
This is me, all right? I'm not an athlete. This is my way. This is how I win.
Today's plays of the day, we're going to take the Tampa Bay Rays, lay 1.5 on the run line as they host the Oakland Athletics. Also going to take the New York Yankees, this at minus 130 juice on the money line over the Baltimore Orioles. Same juice for the Chicago White Sox. They are in Pittsburgh against the Pirates. And to close things out with a little Detroit Pistons action. Going to scoop the 7 here in a tank fest. Pacers-Pistons tonight. I think this is another close, ugly game. Pistons cover that +7 mark. 2-1 yesterday, 5-4 going into yesterday, so 7-5 for the week. As always, rolling with these plays here on the Fan.
I like how you gave us the before yesterday.
That was to save my misstep. Thank you for taking me behind the curtain. That was to save my misspeak. Well, what about you? Any bets you got?
I was all in on the Miami Heat, but it looks like they might be resting some guys tonight. So I do a bad job having picks by about 3. I have them by about tip.
Sure.
By the way, shout out Eddie Garrison. He was all over the White Sox yesterday, right? Didn't you got that one right?
Braves.
I
now faded Jimmy on back-to-back days where his 2 losses have come.
Did you say Giants, though? What game? Was it Giants, White Sox? He had one of the teams to erupt, and I think you were right, weren't you?
No.
No, you're wrong?
I didn't say it on air. I told you over a break that to take somebody, but that did not go well.
Oh, my. I promise you I thought it did work out. Not trying to throw you under the bus. All right, that's going to do it here. JMV, top of the hour. Keep it locked. Brian Noe, Jimmy Cook. Been a lot of fun. Fun week. Have a great weekend.
Make the cut, Tiger.
107.5 The Fan is...